Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelard.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député de l'Abbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce. Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara. Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Rob Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ozef. Monsieur le député Balash. Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Wall. Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf. Madame le député Catherine Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Rose Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell. Monsieur le député Tom Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Alex Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Barbara Ward. Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Madame le greffier.
Prions Dieu, notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton Saint-Nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir le cœur et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes leurs délibérations étant accompagnées de ta bénédiction, réussissent au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qui te plut de commettre à le soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car toi la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Sir, Deputy Luce is attending a medical appointment this morning. Wondered if he may be marked excusé.
Members agree the deputy may be marked defo excusé? Defo excusé.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Les États sont constitués. The proposition adopted yesterday in relation to removal of jackets remains in effect until the weather conditions moderate. We now move to the chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee under Standing Order 118. I invite members to nominate a chair of PPC. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could I nominate Deputy Alves?
Is that nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations? Deputy Hegaran.
I'd like to nominate the Constable of St Martin, sir.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations for the chair of PPC? No. Accordingly, in accordance with the procedure that applied yesterday in relation to ministers, candidates will speak for up to 10 minutes and then have 20 minutes of questions, with the greffier ringing a bell when the time is up. And in accordance with the procedure yesterday, I now invite the Connétable of St Martin to withdraw from the chamber. And she will be escorted to a quiet room with a member of the Statescref staff. I now invite Deputy Alves to address the Assembly for up to 10 minutes. Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. In the last term, I served as Vice Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee for the first few years. And when the Chair was made a Minister, I was successfully elected as Chair of this Assembly for the last 15 months. During my time on PPC, I worked on numerous projects and served on a variety of subcommittees. The main project I worked on was implementing the CPA election observers' recommendations from their 2018 report. This was probably the most controversial thing I worked on, not only for the public, but also with members in this Assembly. Although it was frustrating at times when we did not always get the results we were hoping for, it was extremely important to me that we took the time to listen to the public, negotiate with members, and undertake research when putting together the various proposals for electoral reform. I was particularly pleased and proud that we were able to achieve a majority support for real change after decades of very little change that made a positive impact to this Assembly and our voters. I do recognise that this is still a controversial area, with some members of the public having aired their content at losing the island-wide vote. Whatever happens, sir, it is important that we remember that the Assembly agreed that fair representation and equality in voting weight and power across the whole population should be the basis for any reform of the composition and election of the states. It is also important to keep in mind the recommendations from the 2018 report with regards to simplifying the system, and I look forward to seeing the full report from this year's CPA BIMR Election Observers Mission. An area that is particularly close to my heart is addressing the lack of political education and awareness in our island, and as a result, I set up a subcommittee to address the lack of political education in schools and the wider community. In the last term, I was able to receive official approval from the Curriculum Council to trial a new scheme of work on Jersey politics in schools, but unfortunately, due to COVID, was unable to get into schools to implement this trial. This is something I would be keen to pursue regardless of whether I am elected as chair or not. It is also crucial that we continue to reach out to all areas of the community and work with government to implement the recommendations in the Island Identity Report published by Deputy Labby, particularly those in Chapter 2, which I contributed to, and I thank the Deputy for allowing me and inviting me onto this policy board. Another area which was started but unfortunately not completed was the automatic voter registration and digital voter register system. This needs to be given priority. The fact that voters were once again turned away from polling stations as they weren't at the right one or were told that they weren't registered in time to vote for this election is appalling. It is my view that having an automatic voter registration and digital voter register database could revolutionise the way we do things for election. It not only addresses some of the initial issues highlighted in the EOM preliminary statement, but it also streamlines the work done by the parishes who do a fantastic job of running the elections, and it would increase efficiency. However, in order for this to become a reality, there needs to be a universal identity computer system in government, which also communicates with parishes. At the moment, the government has a number of different systems across all departments, which means that each individual on this island has their identity recorded in different ways from department to department. I was pleased to hear the Chief Minister's comments regarding voters' rights during the Chief Minister election last week, so I hope the government will support this work, as not only will it benefit the public as voters, but having a universal database will also have applications across all departments, increasing productivity, improving the quality of data held by government and long-term savings. In addition to my work on PPC, I undertook some professional development and successfully completed the CPA Election Observers Programme and the Professional Development Certificate in Parliamentary Governance run by McGill University. Both these courses have given me a good understanding of best practice for democratic legislators and an insight into areas that we need to work on as a parliamentary body. As a result of my work on PPC and completing these courses, I was invited to give a lecture in September to the new cohort at McGill University, as a first for the university who had never invited a past participant back to do this. This highlighted to me the importance of sharing best practice and also sharing methods to achieve positive change with colleagues around the world. I would like to look at how we can find a way of doing this on a more regular and formal basis. There has been some massive improvements in the support resources available to States members, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the States Gref Department, who have been and continue to be invaluable to us. But I think members would agree that there is still more work to be done, specifically around dealing with constituents' queries, communications, and professional development. At the end of last term, a quick review of the CPA recommended benchmarks for democratic legislators was done with a small subcommittee, and a report was published which shows areas in which we are and are not compliant with. I would like to see us address these areas where we are not fully compliant sooner rather than later. So when I was elected chair in the last term, it was important to me that my newly formed committee included representatives from all sectors of the Assembly. I had representation from each category of States member, including 2 constables, and with the emergence of new parties and movements, I feel it is vital more now than ever that everyone feels represented and heard on PPC. PPC is required to work across all roles of the Assembly and is here to support and assist members, but also uphold conduct, rules and improvement in our governance. I have shown my ability to work through contentious issues such as the electoral changes and improvements to rules that govern us as a body. In addition, machinery of government changes that may need to be made will require a chair to work consistently, fairly and appropriately with government to achieve the best outcomes for the public we serve. Even during some of the most difficult times, I have always endeavoured to support and assist members as much as possible, regardless of our politics. I hope I have shown I am able to work with all members, that I am approachable, adaptable and determined to achieve best outcomes for our Assembly, members and the public. It was a pleasure to serve on PPC in the last term, and it would be a privilege to serve again as PPC chair for this next term. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Alves. The first question for Deputy Alves is from the Connotab of St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. From previously being able to vote for their constable, for 10 senators and for 2 deputies, a total of 13 elected representatives, electoral reform slashed the choice for St Lawrence parishioners to being able to vote for only 5 members of this Assembly. How would the deputy attempt to convince the electorate of St Lawrence that they have not been disenfranchised?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Connotab for her answer. I think there needs to be a body of work around what it actually means, the current voting system. So although I can understand that obviously the quantity of votes that a member of the public from St Lawrence can vote for has decreased, the voting power of each vote is much more equally balanced than it was before. So I don't think it's fair that one person who lives on one side of a boundary of a parish their vote has a lot bigger weighting than somebody who lives on the other side. And actually, during our electoral reform roadshows that we did when we first brought the proposition last term, we actually received a letter from a parishioner in St Clement's who said that they didn't feel like they wanted to vote anymore. This was before the changes, because they knew that the weight of their vote wasn't as equal as somebody else in another parish. So I can understand people's frustrations regarding the number of votes that they can cast, but I think it's really important that people understand that this is about equality, and that their vote is weighted the same regardless of where they live. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Supplementary, please, sir. Yes, thank you. The roadshow in St Lawrence made it clear to the representatives of PC when they held it that they did not want the changes to take place. How does the deputy feel she can justify ignoring the will of the parishioners of St Lawrence? And may I add, other parishes in which the roadshow attended?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. We did do a whole body of work as well, where we did focus groups and surveys, and ultimately we were working on the recommendations from the EON report. So sometimes, sir, this assembly has done things that are often very unpopular with the public, but are for the greater good. So, for example, I wasn't in the assembly at the time, but when GST came to the assembly, I remember that there was very, very long petitions that had been created against it, and yet this assembly still implemented it, sir. So sometimes, I think, as difficult as it is, we do have to think of the greater good, and this is about achieving balance and equality. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Tadia.
Thank you, sir. The candidate did touch on it in her opening speech, but would she comment on the value that she puts as PPC chair on outreach, and also in particular outreach with minority communities, bearing in mind that she is a bilingual member of this assembly in the two majority languages of the island? Does she think that's in particular is an advantage for any chair of PPC?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the deputy for his question. I think I did touch on it in my speech, and I think it is a really important piece of work that we need to pursue. Unfortunately, I hate using this as an excuse, but it has been a major issue. COVID has really got in the way of us doing more outreach work in the last term. With the Diversity Forum, however, myself and Deputy Dublé, who was the chair of the Diversity Forum, we did do an event in St Helier Parish Hall, which was quite successful, which invited some people from the minority communities to come along and have a chat excuse me, and learn about how the assembly works and what they can do to stand for election. I'd like to see a lot more events like that. My initial ideas were actually to get out into events that are run throughout the year. So, for example, we have a very successful Portuguese food fair. And I think it would be really good if Vote.je, for example, had a gazebo there where they were able to disseminate information, talk to people, make people aware of their voting rights, because it is something that even in this election, people were still surprised that they only require 2 years residency to vote. So to answer the second part of the deputy's question, whether I think it's an advantage to have someone who is from a minority community themselves as chair, I think it's important to have a diverse committee, much like we have in our assembly, and whether that would be me as chair or me as a member, whatever happens, I think it is important to have that representation on the committee. Thank you, sir.
And so in terms of public engagement, does the current chair believe that part of the problem is when the public have seen year after year people getting returned to an assembly unopposed and they haven't had local elections in their area, it's understandable, of course, that they'll have therefore an affinity with the island-wide mandate. But does she think that it's important at this election, which has seen a great diversity within the deputies' benches, more women than ever, the majority, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and that we allow the system to really engage with the public on that level?
Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, I would 100% agree with what the deputy has said there. I think COVID provided its challenges in that although we were able to get electoral change through the assembly, we weren't necessarily able to get the information out to the public with enough time. This was highlighted obviously as well on election day, and it was also stated in the preliminary statement where there was still some teething problems with regards to where people were unsure where they were meant to be voting on the day. So I think that this is all very new. I think that obviously we haven't really had an opportunity to get out there and do a lot of outreach work. The GREF did a fantastic job in the very short space of time that they had, but I do think we do need to give it a chance and some more time to let things bed in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. And my question is about the Diversity Forum. Would the candidate re-establish this as a subcommittee of PPC? And what would she do to help to continue the work towards making our Assembly more inclusive? And I'd like her to address gender and disability, but also any other issues within her answer, please.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would expect the Diversity Forum to be a standing forum now going forward. I think there is still a lot of work, again, that we need to do outreach-wise. I think there's also a lot of work that we need to do even with regard to disability and making things accessible for people. So one example is that on election day, there wasn't necessarily material that was available for those who are visually impaired. There also wasn't, for example, signs in sorry, the word escapes me. Is it Braille? For those people who can't see and read with their fingers. I think ultimately we need to do a whole engagement program and reach out to organisations as well. And get their feedback on what they think we should be doing to reach out and increase diversity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes.
Just to clarify the question, so Diversity Forum, of course, is working on the Assembly as a parliament rather than the wider issues. So perhaps the candidate could just elaborate further on how, as a parliament, with the current members that we have, how we could be more inclusive in terms of gender and disability, but also as well in terms of being a family-friendly parliament and a carer-friendly parliament.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the deputy for her question. I think there are probably things in standing orders that need to be looked at again to ensure that our assembly is as family friendly as possible. I think a lot of the time was spent last year on debating whether we should be sitting late, for example. This not only put those who have caring responsibilities in a difficult situation, it also frustrated the public. So I think we need to look at standing orders again and how we can tighten that up to ensure that we are as inclusive and accommodating as possible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Deputy mentioned in her speech, we are attending together the parliamentary course, for Parliamentary Governance at McGill University. What's the deputies planning to do to encourage more members to take the course and make their professional education up?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure, as the deputy knows, obviously I don't have the power to make anything compulsory for members to attend. I think to the particular course that I mentioned in my speech, I know that the deputy also did with me. I think it would be really useful to work with the CPA to be able to maybe have courses like that on a much more regular basis. That particular course was only open to those who were newly elected in the last 2 years. And there were parts of that course that I think would be really useful to members, regardless of where they are in their political career. So I think it would be a case of reaching out to the CPA and improving the communication to members as to exactly what is available, and maybe actually dedicate specific professional development time during the weeks where we're not in the States Assembly, where members can sign up for courses. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Supplementary, please?
Yes.
A continued professional development is an integral part of any organizations. If deputy planning to create a program for the states members to work on their continued professional development?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I think it would be difficult to put together a program that would suit every single member, because every member has a different area of specialism, for example, or a different area of interest. Although I hope that the new members found the induction program useful, because that has changed a lot from when I was elected last term, with the help of the GREF, who were very, very responsive in that. I think there is definitely scope to ensure there is a resource or an area where members are aware of exactly what courses are available to them. But I think implementing a program as such would be difficult, also with the fact that members have their time stretched in all different directions with different responsibilities. So I think having a concrete program would actually make it less accessible to members. I think it would be more useful just to make members aware that there are, all the courses that are available, and members can sign up as and when. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Hegarau.
Thank you, sir. Much is discussed about equality of voting. Would the deputy be supportive of an Ireland-wide vote for all?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I was asked this during the election campaign, actually, on various occasions. I will say that as a party, and personally, we have always advocated one type of states member. Now, whether that is all senators or all deputies, I think it wouldn't really matter, to be honest. For me, I just don't want to go backwards to the 3 categories. I think the last report that we had, and reports before, and even actually the referendum, because the changes that have just been implemented were basically the implementation of the result of the referendum. I think that, sorry, sir. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go backwards to 3 categories. Our system, one of the things that was highlighted in that report from 2018 was that our system was complicated and cumbersome. Those were the exact words that were used. And I think going backwards and having 3 categories is not going to make it any simpler, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supplementary, actually, sorry, my apologies. I didn't actually mean going back to 3 categories. What I mean is actually an Ireland-wide vote for all, because the public quite clearly want the ability to vote for whoever they want to vote for. So what I'm asking is Ireland-wide vote for all.
Deputy.
Can I just clarify, sir, is that when you say island-wide vote for all, is that including the constables or not including the constables?
I would be happy for her to give her view on either way, whether that includes the constables or removes the constables. But I think from the perspective of the voters, equality for them was being able to choose out of the 49 of us who they wanted to choose for.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I thank the Deputy for her question. I think whatever changes we do now, we need to make sure that we do research, that we go out to the public, that we bring the public with us. I'm open to change as long as we keep the equality of voting, and the Deputy is right, having an island-wide only mandate would do that. My concern would still be around the constables and the weighting of their votes in the Assembly. However, if it is the will of the public, then so be it. I think members have to remember that this committee, it isn't just me. I am simply the spokesperson for the members on the committee. So last time there was a number of times where I didn't necessarily agree with what I was proposing, but I did it nonetheless because that was the majority support within the committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Many islanders will feel that as states members we are grossly overpaid and grossly underworked, but many of us know the reality of that is quite different. My question is, and this is a difficult issue, and I think we've avoided this for too long, is does she think that the levels of pay for states members are appropriate, and are they attracting or allowing for the very best members of our society to stand and serve in this Assembly, sir? And as an addendum to that question, does she believe that there should be different levels of pay depending on the roles carried out by members? And if the answer to either of those questions is yes, would she undertake for the PPC to work on this as a matter of urgency? I know it's not popular. It's never popular when we discuss these issues. But the reality is, sir, I think we have to face up to those difficult questions and not back off from making changes, sir, to ensure this Assembly can facilitate members from all of society. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, and I thank the Deputy for this, I think, very important question, actually. He's absolutely right. It isn't an easy subject. I personally will say that I did take a pay cut when I stood for this role, and I know that there are also other members that have done the same. I don't believe that the current remuneration is appropriate and is attracting the very best to stand. However, I do realise that there is quite a gap in the public knowledge and perception of what it is that we do. I think, I'll be honest, from the outside, before I became a states member, I didn't really understand the level of work that a states member that it involved. Obviously, before I stood, I found out and I spoke with my party, but I think that there's a body of work that needs to be done there. Just to touch on the different levels, I think it's very difficult to justify paying people different levels because the different roles come with different levels of support. So I think whatever happens, the new remuneration thing that we have in place, where we don't have the remuneration body anymore, we have a rolling reviewer or board that will be set up every year. I'm hoping they will be a lot more open to looking at this properly, and to also maybe doing some outreach work as well to the public, or to help us to do that outreach work to the public, to really make the public aware of the work that this role entails. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Arns. That completes the period of questions for you. I'm now going to invite you to leave the meeting, and I think, as you know, you're going to join a separate one and be sort of notionally locked in a room.
Thank you, sir.
In a virtual room with a member of the GREF staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite the Connotar Officer Martin to return to the chamber? Councillor St Martin.
I'm running for chair of PPC because I believe that I have the skills, drive and commitment to successfully enhance the State's Assembly and deliver a more democratic and politically engaged Ireland. To address the elephant in the room, it has been pointed out to me that I'm a constable going for PPC. Well, yes, I am. I'm a constable and I'm proud of the position, and I'm a very progressive constable. My interest in PPC is clearly demonstrated through my past membership of the committee and my successful propositions on campaign finance reform and the introduction of none of the above candidates ballot option at uncontested elections, which I believe has successfully demonstrated itself a worthwhile and competitive innovation. Furthermore, I believe that this ballot option represents my skill for fresh thinking and my willingness to consider new ideas to solve long-standing problems. We have a clear vision of the work programme for the new PPC, and I'm eager to get this underway as soon as possible. However, there are also some areas that I believe we can go further on in order to meet the challenges ahead. We need to continue to address both the recommendations of the previous Assembly's Democratic Accountability and Governance Subcommittee, which was very ably led by former Senator Belwar, and the findings of the upcoming report on the Electoral Observers Mission. Work on the Corporate Parenting Action Plan will need to begin, and remote participation will require further consideration. Likewise, we have the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association benchmarks, which will need to be addressed over the coming term. We will also need to establish an independent panel on states members that will appoint a reviewer who will themselves review the amount of remuneration and allowances payable to a states member. The new PPC has two critical areas to address around standards. The first, the recruitment of the new Commissioner for Standards to replace Paul Kernahan, who will be leaving his role in February 2023 after almost 6 years of outstanding service. And I look forward to collaborating with our sister island of Guernsey in delivering a joint recruitment exercise on this in the autumn. In tandem, I believe it is vital that the new PPC responds to the work of the Diversity Forum and begins work on drafting a behaviour code for members, which I believe will be absolutely essential for the development and promotion of an inclusive and well-run Assembly. I am determined to deliver this by the end of our term of office, and I believe that it is of fundamental importance that it is able to address the needs and concerns of members and provides necessary safeguards against their abuse. It is for this reason that I believe that it is vital that we continue with the Diversity Forum subcommittee during this Assembly in order to promote greater diversity, inclusivity and engagement with and from islanders. And I would welcome members to register their interest in joining the forum should I be elected as chair. The island has elected 35 independents and 14 members of 4 different political parties. It is clear from the number of candidates who stood as party members that it may not always be the case that the island selects a majority independent assembly. Therefore, it is absolutely critical that this PPC addresses the work undertaken by the committee responsible for researching how standing orders might respond to the formation of political parties and addresses any remaining concerns around funding and administration. I want to ensure that this Assembly gives no preference to parties nor to independents, but instead provides an equal playing field without loopholes or deficits. Those who are familiar with me know that I am fiercely independent and will not be swayed by partisan or anti-partisan sympathies. I believe in fairness and equality and in our collective mandate from the public, and this is why I believe that I am in an excellent position to deliver as chair of PPC. I'm determined to see the delivery of proper office space for members during this term. The members from the previous Assembly will know how important this is, and the new members might be surprised and frustrated by the lack of facilities. I will work hard with the new committee and the Government of Jersey to achieve this. An amendment to last year's government plan has committed us to a feasibility study of 4 identified sites for this work, and it is imperative that the committee begins work on this as soon as possible. I also intend to work with the government, constables and other key stakeholders to provide working space for members in their districts and parishes, a challenge that I believe we can quickly resolve. It is of fundamental importance that we review the strengths and weaknesses of our new electoral system and consider its alternatives. This, of course, includes Deputy Gorf's proposition on restoring the senatorial mandate. The new system has delivered welcome change in the composition of the Assembly, but failed in increasing voter turnout. Many people have voiced frustration at the loss of the island-wide mandate and the differing number of votes an individual may have depending on where they are registered. I do not want to immediately commit to any revised system due to the lingering questions over its composition, voting system and other related concerns. Instead, we need to give islanders the opportunity and the agency to discuss, consider and shape Jersey's electoral system in a way that guarantees a genuine solution that satisfies both islanders, international standards and our commitments to diversity and inclusion. For those who are interested in my views on the recall mechanism discussed in PPC's legacy report, I believe that this may be the best place to develop it for the Assembly to consider later on in its term. I believe it is fundamentally vital that PPC is able to take islanders on this journey and give them the chance to provide input and ideas along the way. We need to actively show the public that electoral reform and the rest of the Assembly's work is not something that happens behind the scenes, but is in fact an active, continuously evolving opportunity that they have the power to influence. It is for this reason that I do not wish to rule out any potential mechanisms or options through which we can deliver this. This opportunity for further engagement extends to our need to address turnout. Turnout at last month's election remains lower than we should ever feel comfortable with. It is for this reason that I want us to do more with the Youth Parliament and Youth Assembly, alongside other initiatives, to strengthen the engagement that children and young people have in engaging and working with elected members in shaping the future of the island, whilst looking at other opportunities from across the board to deliver greater public participation and deliberation for all ages and communities in Jersey. For the past 2 years, the State's GREF has organised a Democracy Week, and I believe that PPC must do more to support its organisation and the opportunities it provides. As we saw with the success of the Corn Rights Festival, there are incredible possibilities available for us to develop the island's democratic culture and engagement, and we need to use our talent, our connections and our resources to make our democracy as fun and as engaging as possible for everybody in Jersey. To conclude, PPC has its work cut out, but I believe that by working together in an inclusive and holistic way that prizes innovation and new ideas, whilst guaranteeing islanders the opportunity to help shape this work, we can successfully deliver not just a fairer, more equal and more dynamic Assembly, but a more engaged, more democratic and more exciting future for Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Conatab. The first question is from Deputy Mesic.
Thank you, sir. This Assembly is... getting ahead of yourself there. This Assembly is the most diverse and representative that Jersey has ever had. Does the candidate regard this as merely a coincidence, or does she regard it as a consequence of having a fairer and more balanced voting system than Jersey has ever had as well?
Hello, I'm delighted that we have such a diverse Assembly which is much more reflective of the island as a whole. And I would say that, yes, it has a lot to do with the reforms that we put in place.
Thanks, sir. I'm pleased with that answer. I share the candidate's view there. Would she therefore agree then that having taken this step in having a fairer, simpler and more balanced voting system, that in exploring any potential options, we shouldn't seek to throw the baby out with the bathwater and make sure that if there is to be any change in future, that it is absolutely a type of change that moves us forward and not simply go backwards to the system that was essentially imposed on the island by the British Home Office in 1947, and which, let's be honest, nobody really liked.
Actually, quite a few people did like it, but no, I actually concur with the deputy that, yeah, we have moved forward. I don't think there's any place for retrograde steps. I said in my speech that I'd want to have a conversation with the public and everyone else. I think that we just need to tweak. There's some tweaks that we need to the system. Some people did feel a bit disenfranchised if you're in an area where you have 3 votes and someone else has 5 votes. They see that there's more voting equity in the assembly. But as I hopefully pointed out really well, I'm not somebody who's just wouldn't want to go back for the sake of it. I think we have to move forward. I think there's a lot we can do to engage with the public on this and and do the right thing, because it's fantastic. And as if I can say this, the first day that we sat to say goodbye to the governor, having sat in the assembly before, it was just amazing for me as a woman to look around and see so many women in here. So I'm not going backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad St Helier.
Thank you, sir. Does the candidate find it a problem that the presence of the constables in the States Assembly can produce extremely unfair results, such as a vote about a matter of extreme importance to St Helier, which is lost by 1 vote, and the Constable of St Mary, for example, will be exercising the rights of 1,800 voters, and the Constable of St Helier exercising the right of approximately 18,000 voters, and therefore the voters of St Mary can be said to have had a lot more influence over that decision than the voters of St Helier. How can that be resolved? It's a problem we have now, and it's going to persist until it is resolved. Thank you, sir.
It is something that we need to do some work on, but then all the districts weren't completely fair. So some of them had, 1,000 more voters than other districts. So, what are we going to do? We're going to split up the island into tiny little individual areas. We can look at that. Maybe I think constables are essential in looking at for the well-being of the island. So, and I do think that a lot of the constables do a huge amount of work. I do a huge amount of constituency work, and I've put in 5 propositions. So I do just as much work as a deputy would. That is something that we really do have to look at. And I'm not a genius. I don't have the answer to that right away. But yes, we will look at voter inequity.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I'd also like to know whether the candidate feels that none of the above was a useful addition to the voting this time round, and whether that, particularly as it affected constable candidates, is something that she would seek to keep going with.
Actually, I think from the feedback I've had, it was a success. It was obviously a very new innovation, and we'll need some tweaking before the next election. But it actually got everybody out. On nomination night, I didn't become a constable-elect, like I did 4 years ago, which was a complete shock to me. We all went out, we all got voted, we all are in here with a mandate. So I know it was difficult more difficult in some of the areas, but I do think actually that in 4 years' time, I would like to see that all the constables have opposition, and that's not. Yeah, I honestly think that. I think that's good for democracy, and I think that we've brought the constables forward with NOTA, that we're more relevant, more seen in the public's eye, and more people will realise that they can actually go for the position. So I think it was. I know I brought it, and I'm not usually one to praise myself, but I think it was a great success. Thank you. Thank you,
Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask a question in regards to none of the above? Given that none of the above was not a campaign, or it wasn't in most areas, does the constable think that there may be a consideration of none of the above having to reach a percentage in order to be influential, seeing as you've got somebody standing on a canvassing and knocking on every door, but none of the above can't knock on any doors? So do you think you foresee a future whereby a percentage is agreed upon by PPC, when none of the above will be effective rather than just a straight majority?
That's a good point to have made. I hadn't thought of that. And as I said, NOTA this time was not perfect. It was a new innovation. It did bring people out to vote. And it is something that, as I said, I'm very open to looking at, because I do think that NOTA was not perfect at all, but it was a step in the right direction, so I'd look at that.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes.
And would part of that be and I genuinely don't know my opinion on this, so I'm genuinely interested in the candidate's opinion, sir. Would part of that be the introduction of compulsory voting, so that if none of the above is there, there will have to be a genuine decision by all voters registered? And what does the candidate think of that sort of concept to increase turnout?
Thank you. I know that in Australia it's compulsory voting, and I think it is something, because we have such poor voter turnout, and especially actually in St Helier, it's appalling. We really do in PPC, whoever has PPC this year, we really have to work on getting more people out to vote. And I think that's something we could really look at, is compulsory voting. For example, I'll have my rates assembly on Thursday night. We'll probably have about 60 people there. I know that at St Helier's rates assembly last week, I think there were 17 members of the public and 7 deputies there. So there's something that we really do need to do to engage. And as I said, I want to try and get out more events to reach everybody in whatever culture you are, whatever you are, to really engage people in democracy. I'm somebody who's been very heavily involved in politics since I was about 11 years old. And so to me, it's second nature, but I want that interest and that excitement about democracy and voting to be shared by everybody. So I would do everything in my power to achieve this.
Thank you, Conor. Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Does the Conatar believe that the package, the remuneration on offer to states members, is sufficient to attract or indeed enable all members of our society to stand and be represented in this assembly? And as an addendum to that question, sir, does she also believe that there should be different levels of pay for states members depending on the role they are elected, sir, to perform by this assembly? And if the answer to any of those questions is yes, sir, would she undertake to deal with that as an important issue on the new agenda for PPC? And I know it's never a popular issue to deal with, looking at how we're compensated for doing this job. But I believe it's an urgent one, sir, if we are to attract and enable all members of our community the option of serving in this assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Conatar.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy for that question. I addressed part of that in my speech, and I said that I would be, if I have PPC, getting an independent reviewer to look at states members' remuneration. And it has been mentioned to me in the coffee room yesterday that would I look at tiered pay for states members. What worries me is that the perception that you could have more pay if you're chief minister, or if you have more pay if you're a minister. But I think that rules out the fact that if you're a scrutiny chair, you have just as much work to do if you're fulfilling the role properly. So yes, I'm more than open to look at this, and if members want PPC to do that, I'm very open to undertaking that piece of work. But as I said, we are looking to get an independent reviewer to look at states' pay, because it is very important, and we don't want to miss out really good candidates because of the pay.
Supplementary? No. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. And the candidate has already indicated that she would re-establish the Diversity Forum. Could she elaborate on this and explain what work she would do to carry on with the progress that we've made in terms of the Assembly, once we're in here, being more inclusive? And could she touch on gender and disability, please? So the Assembly, once we're here, not the kind of wider world, but us as a Parliament being more inclusive.
Thank you. I was on the diversity subcommittee, and we it was a successful subcommittee. We need to make this building, if we can, more accessible. We had I have a good rapport with Vic Tanner Daly and Liberate, and they actually went round and did an audit on all the parish halls, public halls about accessibility. I want to make sure that nobody is, singled out because of a different, because of any differences whatsoever. So I think that comes down into the another part of the work here to make sure that everyone is treated equally. I'm not quite sure exactly what you want me to answer on this one, or what you were looking for. It sounds really generic, but it is.
Through the chair, Connetar.
Sorry, we would be looking at more accessibility, more support for people if they need support. Yes, and I also think that the fact that we'd hopefully quickly get some states members, rooms for states members or offices in parishes or districts. I think that will actually also help a lot with inclusion. Because at the moment we're all fractured, there's nowhere for anybody to work. If we can all come in together and work at offices which are central and near to the Broad Street or near to the Gref, I think that's a great step forward.
Thank you. Supplementary, Deputy Blair.
Thank you, sir. And two further areas in terms of does the candidate think we could be more inclusive as an assembly in terms of being a family-friendly assembly and being carer-friendly? What would the candidate do to improve in those areas?
Yes, I absolutely want it to be more family-friendly. I think we passed that. Last time we did pass that if you were late for roll call, you could cite parental issues, which we've never had before. So we can work further on that. And I know that there's a lot of people in the Assembly now with young children. So I think they're, if I get the chairmanship of this, I will then seek to work with everybody with young children or if people are carers to find out how we can make the Assembly more through the chair, more family friendly. We do have a diverse assembly in here. We don't want to discriminate against anybody. We don't want to discriminate people if they've got young children or they've got caring responsibilities or anything like that. So yeah, I do my best.
Thank you, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Continued professional development is an integral part of any organization. What plans candidates will propose to include continued professional development for the states members?
Well, that's quite a wide question because as soon as, if you become chair of the committee, then you can look at what we actually need to be trained in and what we need to do. So that would be something that I would look at as a priority. That if we have gaps in whatever area, it's such a wide question that. Yes, I would look at continued training for the Assembly, but I would have to know exactly what continued training we needed to have. I wouldn't want to spend good money on getting trainers in just for the sake of having trainers, just because I said that we've done some training. We want to know exactly what we want to have training in, and then I would look to facilitating that. But at the moment, I don't know if the deputy has anything in mind that she wants training in.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Academy offering parliamentary governance course. How the candidate will encourage members to take this course and to learn about parliamentary governance?
Well, firstly, I'd encourage members to become members of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. That's a really good... it's an amazing association to be a member of. They offer the most fantastic courses and opportunities. So obviously, if I'm a chair of PPC, I would speak with the chair of, well, I hopefully will be a member of the CPA. I'm aiming to be a member of that. I will know when the courses are. I can individually or, independently send out the courses to every single states member to see whether they'd like to take part in it.
Thank you. Deputy Hegarau.
Thank you, sir. What's the Constable's view on island-wide voting for all? So there's been much discussion about the equality of voting, and there seems to be some idea that we should bring back senators. However, the question I'm asking is island-wide voting for all.
Thank you. Yes, when I stood at I stood outside my public hall for most of the day on election day, and I would say that probably 80% of the voters wanted island-wide voting, or they wanted the senators back. This is something that I've said that we'll look at, but we'll look at with the public. And I'm not just saying, I'm not quite sure how we'll do it. I'm not thinking a referendum. I'm just thinking that somehow I will find a way that we'll engage with the public. Maybe it'll be going round to public halls, parish halls, town halls, but we'll actually do it in a much more proactive way than happened before. I think we need to have a big conversation, because I think some people feel disenfranchised because of the senators, but they don't really understand how we've moved forward. There is a huge swell of interest in having island-wide voting, and I am not averse to it at all, but it is something that we really have to work on and find out if that's the way that we have to move forward.
Thank you, Tom. Supplementary. Deputy Tadia.
Thank you. The candidate talked about voter equity in terms of the number of votes. Does she agree that there is one solution is to give everybody one vote? And in fact, this was a recommendation in 2013 by Dr. Andrew Rennick, where he said it would be clearly advantageous to introduce alternative voting in single-member constituencies, and that there should be a single vote system for multiple seats in the deputies' elections. Does she understand that logic, and would she look into that?
Yes, I'd actually had a chat with my son about that, and yes, it is something I would look at.
And does she recognise that it is a problem when you potentially have people getting elected who don't have the confidence of more than 50% of those who have voted? And that does happen in our area. It happened to me. I think I got 47% of those who voted, but I still got elected. And that doesn't necessarily bode well in terms of having a mandate.
Yes, I will look at that, and I can stand here and say, as somebody who got 95% about my vote, I honestly, I would look into that.
Thank you. Constable St Lawrence. You can complete your question and have a very short answer.
Beg your pardon? Sorry, I'm taking much longer. The candidate was a member of the former PPC. Will she explain why they did not introduce electronic voting for the last election?
Yes, I can do that. I was only a member of PPC for the last year, A company had been commissioned to look at electronic voting, and they, in a nutshell, they let us down really badly. So we do need to have another look at this again. Yeah, it was not from the want of PPC to have it done. It was just that we were let down by the company.
Thank you, Honourable. That concludes the period of questions. I now ask Deputy Alves to rejoin the meeting, and we'll wait for that to occur. Thank you, Deputy Alves. You're back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll just make sure you're here. Now, both candidates have spoken and answered questions. We now move to the vote. There are two candidates, so we will use the electronic voting in the chamber. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Alves should press the pour button. Any member wishing to vote for the Connétable of St Martin should press the contre button. Members retain the option of abstaining, for which they can press the relevant button. And in respect of those joining us remotely, they can either vote for contra in the way I've just described, or identify the name of the candidate that they wish to vote for. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had an opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce the outcome of the election is that Deputy Alves received 21 votes. The Connétable of St Martin received 28 votes, and accordingly, the Connétable has been elected chair of PPC.
Could I ask for all of the votes to be read out, please?
Yes.
So those voting for Deputy Alves in the chamber, the Connétable of St Helier, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Dublé, Ward, Gardner, Mesick, Osoph, Coles, Horay, Renouf, Catherine Curtis, Faltham, Jearn, Kovac, Barbara Ward, Wilson, Stevenson and Andrews, and in the chat, Deputies Miller and Alves. And those voting for the Connétable of St Martin, the Connétables of St Lawrence, St Brelard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Rouville, St Mary, St Juan and St Saviour, the Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Luce, Morale, the Hegera, Ayer, Farnham, Balash, Gorst, Moore, War, Miles, Rose Binet, Howell, Tom Binet, Ferry and Curtis, and in the chat, Deputy Scott and the Connétable of St Clement.
Thank you, greffier. In accordance with Standing Order 119, the Assembly is due to appoint a new chair of the Public Accounts Committee. I invite members to make nominations for the chair of this committee, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to nominate Deputy Feltham for the chair of the public, as a candidate for the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations for the chair of the Public Accounts Committee? Accordingly, I invite Deputy Feltham to speak for up to 10 minutes and thereafter to take some questions for up to 20 minutes. Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I would like to begin by thanking Deputy Gardiner for proposing me and for the work that she has done in her time as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. She and her team have left a comprehensive legacy report. I promise that I will continue the work with as much dedication and diligence as she has shown during her tenure. I am pleased to be nominated for the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, as I have had a long-held commitment to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector. The key difference between the PAC and other areas of scrutiny is that it looks at the public administration and policy implementation rather than scrutinising the policy itself. As an experienced public servant and having worked in the public sector locally and in Australia, I understand the operational mechanisms within the public service. During my career, I have managed diverse teams, been a member of national working groups, and worked with colleagues from all tiers of government. As Chair of PAC, this insight will enable me to be effective from the start. I worked for the state government of Western Australia for 10 years. During that time, I managed a team responsible for developing and delivering regional arts and cultural policy over the geographically large state, supporting the development of the creative industries, delivering arts and cultural inclusion programmes, and managing funding contracts with organisations in receipt of public funding. I was also part of a senior management team, acting at director level and overseeing significant contract negotiations and relationships with funded organisations, local governments, other state government departments, regional development commissions, and federal government agencies. I always made sure that we had measures in place to ensure that public funds were being spent for the proper purposes. Key performance indicators were in place, and that those in receipt of funding were required to report on how the money was spent and the subsequent outcome for the community. During that time, I was fortunate to work closely with public sector leaders pioneering the delivery of public value-based policy frameworks before they were commonplace. This gave me experience in producing public value-based policy and developing suitable measures to assess delivery and its effect on the community. This experience will be particularly valuable in the role of Chair of PAC. Over the past few years, the need to hold the CEO and other senior officers to account has been drawn sharply into focus. As a union leader, I have had first-hand experience of the impact of target operating models on departments, as well as questioning the Directors General and SEB representatives about their effect on staff and service delivery. I have never shied away from challenging those in power, and I am always willing to ask tough questions, even when I have been at a lower pay grade than the person I am questioning. The knowledge I have gained through my union role means that I have an overview of the operational model of all government departments, enabling me to be efficient and effective in PAC. In both Australia and Jersey, I have been involved in implementing project management frameworks. I am also a certified Prince 2 practitioner. This means I have practical knowledge of how government projects are implemented on the ground and what best practice looks like. As I have practical knowledge, this will ensure that I will remain pragmatic in my approach when making my analysis. No matter what our political ideology is, we all seem to agree on the need to ensure that public funds are being spent in the way that it was intended by the Assembly, and that extravagance and wasteful spending should be eradicated. We all must ensure that sound financial practices and decision-making processes are applied throughout our public administration. I would also like to acknowledge the work done by the Comptroller and Auditor General, and I would look forward to forming a positive working relationship with her and her office. In my public service career, I've always placed a high value on the audit process and the opportunity it allows departments to gain an objective and impartial insight into their operations. As chair of PAC, I would ensure that the recommendations of the C&AG are well understood and acted upon. I am sure that we all want our public sector to continuously improve its service delivery. As chair of PAC, one of my priorities will be to follow up on recommendations made by the Comptroller and Auditor General and assure that Directors General are implementing actions to address them. An essential first step for the new chair will be to establish the committee. I would take an inclusive approach to build a team that has the breadth of experience required to fulfil the duties of the committee. The opportunity to join the committee as a lay member must be well publicised so that we can attract the best candidates. As I mentioned earlier, I thank the outgoing committee for their legacy report and the invaluable advice contained within it for the incoming committee, and its suggestions for follow-up work. This will be the starting reference point I will use to devise a work plan with the new committee. I ask the States Assembly to support me so that we can work together to ensure that our public services are being delivered in the most efficient and effective way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Felton. Towards the end of your speech, there was some pinging from my left. Was it your connotatus, Martin? In that case, you'll make the usual contribution of £10. Yes, Deputy Rob Ward. Yes, and then the connotator.
Thank you, sir. I congratulate the Deputy on the role. Can I ask a practical question of how the Deputy will go about recruiting lay members, and maybe an opportunity for her to advertise the role publicly as well, because I know that's a really important part of the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you, sir.
Deputy.
Yes, and I know it was also very important to Deputy Gardner that the role was advertised as well. I think it's important that it is advertised broadly, and potentially we need to do some kind of public meeting where people can come and find out about it. I mean, lots of us did surgeries and invited people to come and speak with us during the election campaign. I think it's really important that people get an opportunity to learn firsthand about the role, and we encourage inclusive and diverse and well-qualified people to sit on the committee.
Supplementary. Connotator St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. The role of PAC is to review public spending after it has been spent, i.e. after the horse has bolted in some instances. Does the candidate believe that there is a role for PAC to review public spending as it is being spent rather than following the expenditure?
Deputy.
That's an interesting and thoughtful comment, actually. It's not something that I'd put any thought to while I was preparing for this, but I think it is something that potentially we could look at as a committee and then maybe bring to the Assembly as a potential change. I think the important thing is what we do is we look towards continuous improvement all the time, and we ensure, I mean, several of the previous recommendations, and I know Deputy Gardner was concerned with this as well in her previous role, where the recommendations haven't been taken on board by departments. So I'd really like to focus initially on learning from the past and ensuring that those recommendations get taken forward, and then potentially what we could then do is look and see if we can look towards PAC looking at future spending. But of course, that is also for the Assembly to do when we look at the government plan and debate that.
Supplementary.
So did I hear the Deputy commit to a review of the remit of PAC, which I would like her to give to the Assembly, please, sir?
Deputy.
Obviously, it's a democratic committee, but I will commit to taking your suggestion to the committee so that we can make a decision within that committee as to whether to bring that forward.
Thank you. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the quantitative data, say in the previous years, would the candidate be willing to actually go back in terms of reviewing the accounts and also looking at what has actually transpired in terms of if there has been any regular patterns in terms of fiscal expenditure that has maybe been quite erratic? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy.
Yes, I actually think that looking for patterns and things that have happened in the past is really important. One thing that does concern me is whether the current key performance indicators and the key performance indicators that have been used in the past are the correct ones, and that's something that I would seek to potentially work with ministers to look at closely, because we are at the start now of a new government term, and now is the point in time that we need to make sure that we're going to be collecting the right data that we can look at and review and actually ensure that we are able to account for the work that we've been doing.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. In relation to any issues that maybe you have actually picked, in terms of what the candidate has actually picked up, is there anything that you've actually, that the candidate has actually identified as of yet?
Deputy.
Thank you. One thing that does concern me about budgeting and reporting financially within government is the rather broad heads of expenditure, which could potentially cover up slush funds or where efficiencies potentially haven't been met. One other area would actually be looking at efficiencies. We have been told by the previous government that they did make efficiencies. That is something that I want to delve into to see whether in fact that has been done.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Deputy Feltham? Yes, Constable Greville.
Sir, thank you. On the doorstep, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, a great deal of venom was expressed about the employment of consultants over various projects, especially that of the Public Health Committee. Would the candidate agree that perhaps there might be some reason why we need to control the use of consultants, and can her committee actually endeavour to do that?
Thank you, Deputy.
Yes, that's something that I've heard myself, and yes, it is something that I would be particularly keen for the committee to look at, the value for money that we're getting out of consultants, and indeed whether we would get better value from the work currently being undertaken by consultants by employing people as full-time public servants. The other thing that's related to that, I think, is the employment of that people got angry about, is the employment of people from outside Jersey. So I think another thing that we need to look at is the use of employment licences within the states of Jersey, and whether in fact they're being used inappropriately when we could be having local people in certain positions.
Thank you. Supplementary. Are there any further questions for Deputy Feltham? If not, then I confirm that she has been appointed as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee.
Sir, I believe Deputy Scott in the chat wanted to ask a question.
Oh, well, in that case, I should give her a chance to do so, because you've been in the back of the queue quite a lot. Do you mind, Deputy Feltham? Yes, Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I just would like to ask the Deputy this following question. The PAC has produced reports in the last few years, but nothing in the way of propositions. Is it time for the committee to produce some propositions to improve public spending?
Deputy Feltham.
Yes, that's actually something that I have been thinking about over the past few days. There may well be, if the committee sees things that need to be acted on, suitable propositions that it could bring to the Assembly.
A supplementary, Deputy Scott?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Miller. Deputy Miller, you had a question as well.
Thank you, sir. Yes. What would the Deputy do to ensure that government procurement systems actually do result in value for money for the taxpayer?
Feltham.
Obviously, the work programme of the committee is very much determined by the work plan of the Comptroller and Auditor General. But if it was something that we needed to look at in particular, we could look at adding procurement to the work plan for the committee. I need to sit down with the committee when it's appointed to decide and democratically decide what that work plan will entail. But I'm quite happy to have further conversations with the Deputy about her concerns about procurement.
Thank you. Any supplementary, Deputy Miller?
No, thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy Felton.
Yes. Thank you very much for taking those questions. We now move on to the appointment of the chairs of the 5 scrutiny panels. Before we commence with the Corporate Service Scrutiny Panel, it may be worth reminding members of the contents of the notes on the order paper, which provides that ministers and assistant ministers are not eligible for appointment to these positions. For each panel, the relevant ministers are prevented from either nominating candidates or taking part in the final vote. And the corresponding ministers for each panel are as follows. So in respect of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, neither the Chief Minister nor the Minister for Treasury and Resources may nominate or vote. In relation to Economic and International Affairs, the effective ministers are the Chief Minister, the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, the Minister for External Relations and Financial Services, and the Minister for International Development. In respect of the Children, Education and Home Affairs panel, the effective ministers are the Minister for Children and Education and the Minister for Home Affairs. In respect of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure panel, the effective ministers are the Minister for the Environment, the Minister of Housing and Communities and the Minister for Infrastructure. And in respect of Health and Social Security, the effective ministers are the Minister for Health and Social Services and the Minister for Social Security. All ministers are nevertheless able to take part in the questioning of each candidate, and the procedure for the appointment of each panel chair is otherwise identical to the procedure that we adopted for the chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. So we now move to the selection of the chair for the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, under Standing Order 120. Are there any nominations for chair of this panel? Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to nominate Deputy Sam Mezek for the chair of this scrutiny panel.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations? Connétable of Trinity.
Yes, sir. I would like to propose the Constable of St Brelard.
Is that nomination seconded? Yes, sir. Are there any other nominations? There's a point of order. Deputy Scott. It's been withdrawn. Yes, so there are 2 nominations. The first member nominated was Deputy Mezek, so I invite the Connétable of St Brelard to withdraw. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. And can I start by acknowledging and thanking the previous Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel for the very diligent work that they did throughout the previous term of office. You can see in their legacy report the sheer volume of achievements they had in terms of reports and successful amendments brought to this Assembly. And of course, the chair of that panel, who has since gone on to greater things. I make no comment, of course, on whether this is now the established pathway towards Chief Minister. I'll leave that for others, especially given the previous chair as well. So I'm running for this role because I am an experienced scrutineer. I've not served on this panel before, but I want to take on the challenge and ensure that this panel can fulfil its role in our government system holding the Chief Minister and Treasury Minister to account and ensuring that government policies are justified and being carried out correctly. I served in Scrutiny for the whole of the 2014 to 18 term and in the final year of the previous term. I've served as the Vice Chair of the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, a member of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, a member of several review panels, and I was the first chair of the Care of Children in Jersey review panel, and that last panel was set up in the aftermath of the independent Jersey Care Inquiry to monitor progress made in implementing their recommendations. And it was principally the Chief Minister who we scrutinised there, so I do have direct experience there which will be relevant for the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. I know how to do scrutiny. Scrutiny is not and should never be an exercise in politically partisan point scoring, and its approach should not be adversarial. It's meant to be independent, objective and evidence-based to act as a critical friend of the government. Its workload would include monitoring business as usual work streams, comprehensive reviews when a big piece of work comes up, and sometimes having to be reactive when something comes up which takes us by surprise. I'm familiar with the different approaches which are necessary depending on what type of work you're doing. I have experience at working constructively with ministers in the early stages of their policy development, raising concerns as we go along so that they can be incorporated and considered. I have experience at having to work with ministers to timetable in a big piece of work when a very hefty piece of legislation comes forward. And I have experience of having to urgently put together a review when a big problem has been uncovered that can't be left unchallenged. Those instances aren't fun, but they are necessary, and scrutiny must be nimble and bold when it has to be. Some key examples that I've been involved in include leading the review which led to the establishment of the Independent Prison Board of Visitors, helping influence the government's response to the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry report, and chairing the review of the Criminal Procedures Law, which was a massive piece of legislative scrutiny and included bringing several successful amendments to enhance it. So if you weren't in that chair, I might be tempted to ask you for a reference on that piece of work. I've chaired many scrutiny hearings with a diverse range of witnesses, from senior ministers and even a sitting bailiff to interested parties who we weren't holding to account, but who we were trying to get useful information from. So there is a mix of approaches you have to take in hearings. I hope that my approach to scrutiny is enhanced by the fact that I've also served on the other side of the scrutiny table as a minister who at one point was scrutinised by 3 panels. The quarterly hearings felt like they were more than quarterly in those days. I hope that all of that shows that I'm a safe pair of hands for this role. In terms of the big pieces of work I anticipate the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel needing to do in the short term are examining the mini-budget, which we're told is on its way, and of course the Common Strategic Policy and Government Plan. So those alone will certainly keep us very busy indeed. But on top of that, there are legacy issues which we may want to follow up on. The last ordinary report from the previous Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel was on the co-funded payroll scheme, issues which I'm sure members are familiar with. The previous Treasury Minister actually rejected every recommendation that was made in that report. So if the new Council of Ministers is perhaps more open-minded on this, then we may wish to follow up constructively with them on that and make sure that everything is on track. There'll also be the next phase of the implementation of independent taxation, which I know members will be very keen to see carried out properly and ensuring that it meets the interests of our constituents and doesn't push people into hardship. There's also the ongoing review on stamp duty, including some changes which were proposed by the previous panel and adopted by the Assembly that we may wish to ensure is carried out effectively. As well as that, there are proposals that have been made by successfully elected ministers which will come under our remit if they are pursued. We know that the Chief Minister has made some commitments which will likely hit the agenda quite quickly in terms of improving government accountability and establishing the Public Services Ombudsman. Establishing this body and making sure that it's fit for purpose is something that will very much be in the public interest, and the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel will want to ensure that we get it right. So I would be keen to pursue some briefings on that very quickly to establish how we can play our part in that work. And lastly, sir, one final area I want to cover in my opening remarks on this is public engagement. In the previous term of office, the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel and all other panels undertook a very impressive amount of work, particularly in response to the pandemic, where they had to work extremely quickly and under a lot of pressure, given everything that was happening at that time. But the lockdown and everything that followed had a big impact on how we as politicians engage directly with the public. And for a long time, face-to-face contact was severely restricted. Now things are much more open. I hope that we can try to be as inclusive with the public as possible again. In my first term on scrutiny, we deliberately went out of our way to try to make our work accessible when there was likely to be potential public interest in the subjects that we were looking at. An example of this was a review we did in the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel on nursery places, where we held public meetings and public hearings at times and places where those who had childcaring responsibilities would be more likely to attend. And I'm very keen that a scrutiny panel I'm involved in starts thinking about this kind of thing early on to make sure that we can be accessible and help improve public engagement and an understanding of what scrutiny does so that we can benefit from the experiences and the views that the public can put forward to us. And of course that will involve working with other scrutiny panel chairs and the GREF's public engagement team to explore more ways that we can do that kind of thing. So I hope I've made clear my experience in scrutiny before, the fact that I'm a safe pair of hands, and the fact that there is a very substantial amount of work that this panel will have to be getting on with very quickly. I've done this kind of thing before, and I would relish the opportunity to be able to do it for this term of office. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mezek. The first question for the Deputy is from the Connotab of St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. The candidate tells us, I know how to do scrutiny. And I won't argue with that. What we do know, though, is that very often it's the case that the voice of scrutiny goes unheeded in this assembly. So how would the candidate move on from knowing how to do scrutiny to knowing how to ensure that scrutiny is to ensure positive outcomes from the work of scrutiny?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I think there's two elements to that I would want to cover in my answer. The first is that the work of the previous PPC subcommittee on democratic accountability, which I was a member of, spoke about some of the things that needed to be done to enhance scrutiny's ability to do its work, and that spoke about things like a recommendation tracker, that kind of thing. So whoever makes up the next Scrutiny Liaison Committee, I think will want to pursue that, and I'm hoping that the incumbent Chief Minister will be open-minded to those discussions, bearing in mind previous comments that she's made. So that's something that, that we certainly need to look at. I also think different pieces of work will require different approaches, but one thing I tried to do when I was involved in scrutiny, particularly in the first term of office, is to work openly and honestly with your minister at an early stage. If you can anticipate that a piece of work that's ongoing does have some legitimate concerns with it, or that there are some tweaks that could be made to improve it, if you start that early on by being constructive and open, then ministers don't have to get defensive, potentially, when there's a greater risk of that happening the later on you leave that kind of thing. So my view is that if you want to have an impact in those early stages, being open and honest with the ministers you work with is the way to do that. Of course, that's not always possible. Sometimes you encounter issues later on, Or sometimes there is just genuine disagreement about what the best way forward is. Ministers aren't always right. I haven't always agreed with every recommendation that a scrutiny panel has come up with. But if you're bringing forward your amendments or your recommendations in your reports, so long as you try to be objective and evidence-based and make the strongest case that you can, I hope that in this new Assembly we'll have an approach that is more open to what scrutiny says.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. Thank you. So would the candidate see himself as being a critical friend, which is the term that we have used and is applied to scrutiny, or would he be taking the view that he is the leader of a political party and required to follow the wishes of that party, which presumably is the reason he was elected?
Deputy.
Thank you, and it's a very good question, and one that we'll undoubtedly explore over the years to come. What is the line between what is your party business and even if you're not a member of a party, but you've got strong political convictions one way or another. I've had the benefits since the start of my political career of the mentorship from Deputy Southern, who was around when scrutiny was first put together, and he has very strongly taught me that when you're doing scrutiny, you take your political hat off and you put your scrutiny hat on. You are objective and evidence-based, and it is not a platform for political point scoring. Members, I'm sure, may think that I'm someone who enjoys that kind of political stuff, and believe me, I do. But there's a time and place for it, and scrutiny ain't it.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for? Yes, Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. Just following on from the Connétable of St Lawrence, during the last government, the candidate, who was also chair of Reform Jersey, announced so that they would be the official opposition to the government. I wonder if he could give the Assembly an undertaking that there will be no such announcement, because, of course, he is seeking this particular role, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I'm seeking the role, but I haven't got it yet. So I'm not going to give an undertaking that doesn't take into account what the Assembly may or may not decide in the next few moments. What is absolutely the case is that if you are somebody who's heavily involving yourself in big political debates that are based on your manifesto commitments and not based on your scrutiny work, a line has to be drawn somewhere. I know how to draw that line. I'd ask members, including the member who's just questioned me, to look at my record in scrutiny. I was the chair of the Care of Children review panel that scrutinised him as Chief Minister in those days, and I would hope that the Deputy would acknowledge that I did so upholding the purpose of what scrutiny stands for, and I didn't let my politics creep into that work. I'm confident to stand on my record of that, and I would do so within this 4-year term, absolutely. It would be very clear when I'm acting in support of my manifesto and when I'm acting in support of the work of scrutiny.
Supplementary? No. Are there any additional questions for Deputy Mayor? Yes, Deputy Balash.
So following up the questions from the Constable of St Lawrence and indeed from Deputy Gorst, I wonder if the candidate would be able to assure the Assembly, if he were to be elected as chair of the scrutiny panel, that he would seek to ensure that on the panel itself there is a balance of political views, so that the work of scrutiny is not unduly affected by the political affiliations of the chairman.
Absolutely 100%, and that's one of the safeguards that's kind of inbuilt into the scrutiny process, is that you are the chair of a committee, you're not its political leader, you're not its dictator. You work with your committee members, and you reach your decisions for what work you'll do and how you'll do it together. I believe that you can have a stronger scrutiny panel by having a cross-section of the different political wings of this Assembly represented on them. I think I've got history in doing that, sir, where previously I have been on committees that I've chaired with members with very different political views to myself. I remember one where I chaired a committee that for a time had the then Senator Sarah Ferguson on it and the then Deputy Jackie Hilton. So, of course, we had all political persuasions represented on there. Me, of course, representing the moderate centrist wing there. So, sir, you do get a better type of scrutiny when you're politically inclusive, and people who have political persuasions that I don't understand or relate to may well see things differently to me and have questions that they'll ask that'll be perfectly legitimate that simply wouldn't have occurred to me. So you get stronger scrutiny when you're more inclusive.
Any further questions? Yes, Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. And, the candidate is right. I have worked productively with him in the past, and he and I do not share the same political position. But I do wonder, sir, whether the candidate could confirm to the Assembly, unlike others, that he stood on a manifesto which proactively sought to raise tax, and he discussed that when he was standing to be Chief Minister, and at the same time would like to see government spending increased. Thank you.
Deputy.
Sir, to be honest, sir, that is a question to the leader of a political party. It's not a question to the candidate for a chair of a scrutiny panel. I have my views about how our tax system could be improved, and some of those views are inspired by my political values and what I believe is fair and right, as opposed to a deep analysis of the facts and how systems actually work. It is not the job of scrutiny to come up with its own manifesto and to impose it on the Assembly and to use that as a pathway for achieving that. That's for other types. That's for other avenues in politics. What our job will be to do is to scrutinise what comes from the government, some of which will be tax stuff, and it's to work out if it's actually doing what it's meant to be doing, because you can have governments that attempt to do the right thing but are clumsy, and scrutiny's job will be to find out when they're being clumsy and try and push them in the right direction, or to analyse whether that policy is right in the first instance. But that won't be done from a politically partisan point of view, and the safeguard in that will be that we'll have a diverse panel that will not be absolutely committed to the same manifesto principles that I was.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Deputy Mezek? If not, then this period of questions comes to an end, and I invite Deputy Mezek to withdraw from the chamber and the Canatab of St. Brelade to return. Connétable of St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. The Corporate Services Panel is the one of 5 scrutiny panels with responsibility for reviewing government policy, for reviewing new laws and changes to existing laws, for reviewing the work and expenditure of government, and to consider matters of public importance. The role of scrutiny, sir, is evidential and not really intended as a political tool to attack government. It has to be collaborative to work properly and to provide the best value to the public who elect us. That is not to say, sir, that there is anything wrong with robust challenge, where policy may be considered unsound or in need of improvement. I believe that scrutiny has replaced an element of the committee system in that it provides a panel of members who all have an opportunity to contribute to policy formulation, as opposed to ministers who can make autocratic decisions unless, of course, they find themselves challenged by a scrutiny panel. I have, sir, sat on economic development panels between 2005 and 2008, when it was chaired by Deputy Southern. It could be, sir, but I can't say for certain, that he taught me much about scrutiny, what works and what doesn't. I subsequently, between 2008 and 2011, held the office of Minister for Transport and Technical Services, where the affiliated scrutiny panel was chaired by the then Deputy of St John, Philip Rondell, ably supported by Deputy Daniel Wimberley, who many will recall, sir, as being a thorough and well-researched member of this Assembly. We didn't always agree, sir, but the panel made a significant contribution to the work of the department which I was heading at the time. I have the last 4 years chaired the Housing, Environment and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, and have had the advantage of having the support of 5 brilliant members and superb support staff during that period. That panel's legacy report, SR 15/2022, outlines the areas that will need further work during the coming state's term. So scrutiny has matured, and I believe that all states members need to spend some time on it, not only so that they can understand the process, but also to make the point that the days of autocratic decisions by ministers is a thing of the past. I would make the point now, sir, that if elected, I would expect to be challenging the Chief Minister and the Treasury Minister regularly. Whilst my name, sir, is put forward for chair of the Corporate Services Panel, the role is that of a facilitator for the panel, and this is very much a team effort, with all members having the ability to contribute so that pertinent reviews and succinct comments can be made to enable members here to make properly informed decisions when the time comes. I believe, sir, that it is appropriate for connétables to involve themselves in scrutiny work, in that a ministerial role is not always considered compatible given obligations to parish work. My parish procurers so do attempt to rein me in by making that point, but personally, I think that scrutiny is the perfect mechanism for parishes to link with state's work. While, sir, the former Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel's legacy report, SR 10/22, outlines several areas for further discussion, I await policy to emerge in due course from the Chief Minister and Treasury Minister, which the future panel would consider during its term of office. The Chief Minister has chaired this panel herself over the last term and provided much robust challenge to her now predecessor in office. I see no reason, sir, why her example should not be emulated. Deputy Gorser, the Treasury Minister, has managed to evade a scrutiny role during his political career so far, but as a seasoned member, he has learned that it is better to work with scrutiny rather than against them. In conclusion, sir, I thank members for their attention and take this opportunity to open the invitation to any members who may wish to be on the panel in the event that I should be elected. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Connétable. Are there questions for the Connétable of St Brelard? Connétable of St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. How would the candidate attempt to ensure that the voice of scrutiny is paid more heed in the Assembly than has been the case so far?
Conotable.
I thank the Conotable, sir, and I think it's important for the scrutiny panel chair and members to push their reports forward, to push their comments forward, and actually to ensure that comments do come to this Assembly in good time for members to be able to consider them in depth and vote appropriately. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? No. Are there any other questions for the Conotable of St Brelard? Yes, Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the candidate how he would try to ensure diversity on the panel, so therefore truly reflecting, as the Assembly has more diverse reflection of our society. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I invite all members who feel they can contribute to the panel and would prefer a diverse mix out of choice. That has been the case during the last period. We were very well represented by, in my former panel, by Deputy Gardner and the late Conotable of St Saviour, who both made significant contributions to the panel's work. So I would follow that same pattern. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Conotable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. From the candidate's previous experience, not only as chair of the Environment Scrutiny Panel last time, but therefore on what is now called the Scrutiny Liaison Committee, does he accept that over the period of the last administration, there has been a greater degree of input and cross-exchange between the various scrutiny panels? And if he were elected, would he continue that forward by consulting with the other chairs of the panels to ensure that a rounded challenge is made to the various ministers when required?
Sir, I do. I'm a great believer in open communication and utilising the combined voice of scrutiny to put forward a message to either the Chief Minister or the Assembly in general, I think is essential and is a tool we haven't perhaps utilised as much as we might. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. If the candidate is successful, what is the first piece of work that he would like to undertake and why, sir?
I suspect, sir, the first piece of work the panel would be undertaking is the government plan, which will hit our desks pretty quickly in the next few months. And that is a considerable amount of work, which will take some time for the panel to consider and has a fairly finite timeline. So I think that will be the first. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And is there anything in particular in that government plan that the candidate would like to focus on?
Yes, sir, the question of taxation, I think, is very high in people's minds, given that the latest circumstance is affecting people's pockets significantly. There is a shortage of money in the pockets of the general public, and we must, as a government, respond to that in a focused way and a practical way to make it, to enable these current difficult times to be mitigated by, I think, taxation. Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions for the Conotable of St Brelard? If not, then that brings the period of questions to an end. And I invite Deputy Mezek to return to the chamber. As both candidates have spoken and answered questions, we now move to the vote. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Mezek should press the pour button when the voting opens, and any member wishing to vote for the Connétable of St Brelard should press the contre button. Members retain the ability to abstain by pressing that button. And in relation to those attending on the link, they may either vote pour or contre in the way I've described, or identify the name of the candidate for whom they wish to cast their vote. And I ask the greffier to open the voting. All members have the opportunity of casting their votes, and ask the greffier to close the voting. The outcome very close, and I can announce that the number of votes cast for Deputy Mezek is 23, and cast for the Connétable of St Brelard 22. Now that Deputy Mezek has been elected Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you, sir. Can I just take the opportunity to thank those that voted for me and to thank the Constable of St Brelard. If he wants a conversation about membership of the panel, I'm certainly open to it.
Could we ask for the votes to be read out, please?
Yes.
Those voting for Deputy Mezek, the Connétable of St Helier, Deputy Southern, Deputy Labbe, Deputy Farnham, Deputy Tadier, Deputy Ward, Mezek, Coles, Porre, Wall, Renouf, Catherine Curtis, Feltham, Rose Binet, Jeune, Kovac, Curtis, Barbara Ward, Wilson, Stevenson, and Andrews, and in the chat, Deputy Alves and Deputy Miller. And those voting for the Connétable, Connétables of St Lawrence, St Brelard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Rouville, St Juan, St Mary, and St Saviour. Deputy Luce, Morel, Lehegara, Ayer, Gardner, Balash, Miles, Powell, Tombinet, and Ferry, and in the chat, Deputy Scott and the Connétable of St Clement.
I'll move to the selection of the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel, under Standing Order 120. I invite members to make nominations for the Chair of this panel. Deputy Gardner.
I would like to propose Deputy Kovac, please.
And is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations for the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel?
Sir.
Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to nominate Deputy Scott.
Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations for Chair? Thank you. Accordingly, Deputy Scott, I'm going to invite you now to leave the chat and to go to a secure Teams meeting with a member of the GREF staff. And when it's been confirmed to me that's occurred, I will invite Deputy Kovac to address the Assembly. Yes, it does, yes. Yes, Deputy Kovash.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, I want to begin by making reference to the work of the previous panel, who in the years of 2018 to 2022 met over 300 times, lodged 23 common papers, produced 12 reports, made 205 findings, made 86 recommendations, 75 of which were accepted in full or part. So I wish to pay tribute to those members of this assembly who gave their time and effort to achieve these results. I have spent some time looking at the very varied and broad remit of this panel. I'm going into this with my eyes wide open. I believe that there are many interesting areas that could form the basis of future reviews and work plans. In the time allowed, it is not possible for me to go into great detail. However, I'm open to answer any questions members may have shortly. I have mentioned earlier the very varied and broad remit, and I want to highlight each area covered, as I found it useful to find out about each as a new member, and others might find it too. This includes the excellent and valued work of the Jersey Overseas Ed Commission and International Development, the work of the Jersey Financial Services and Jersey Finance, oversight of the Channel Islands Financial Ombudsman, oversight of the Civil Aviation Director, including Air Traffic Control, Jersey Met Office, Airport Security, so oversees the weather as well, air travel and ferries, with one or two serious issues highlighted recently in the media regarding flights and ferries availability. Jersey Data Protection and Information Commissioner receives about 500,000 grant with nearly 7,000 organizations registered. Jersey Competition Regulatory Authority, which has fee income of nearly 1 million per year and receives a grant of about 700,000. Jersey Charity Commission, which now has about 450 charities on the register, over 1,700 citizens serving as governors, and the funding for operational costs comes from the Dormant Bank Accounts Fund. Jersey Gambling Commission is arm's length. However, I have noted that the memorandum of understanding has not yet been signed. The licensing law, which needs updating. However, it looks that it has been under review for the last 20 years at least. Jersey Aircraft Registry has not developed as envisaged, and I understand from the legacy report that an Oxera report remains confidential, perhaps a subject for the panel to look at. The sports strategy, which is linked to Jersey sport, getting fitter, health and well-being programs. I believe the panel should monitor the ongoing situation at Fort Regent and its effect on the many sporting clubs and associations, especially the smaller ones. We should promote more sport and event-led tourism to include rugby, netball, football, cricket, etc., many others linked to cultural heritage arts, promoting charm, music, professional dance, and festivals. I know the previous Council of Ministers approved in December 2021 a Heritage Arts and Culture Strategy. The previous panel had the briefing in January 2022, and it says it is following a 10 years framework after stakeholders' engagement. In 2019, Deputy Tadier had the states agreeing to provide 1% of states' revenue expenditure on arts, culture, and heritage by 2022. And also work has started on restoration projects at Elizabeth Castle, and we know the Opera House needs sorting. The tourist strategy, there has been some delay with this, and previous panel were given a copy, which I didn't get the chance to see yet, but this is an obvious area of interest, and as it's a valuable part of our economy and community. The economic framework of the marine environment. The report was due to be published May 2022. This includes important areas of fishing and licensing. The P75 per 2022 was also approved by the Assembly to establish a Technology Accelerator Fund. However, briefing is required here for a future panel. The ongoing progress of this fund will be overseen by Digital Jersey. Financial services legislation and Moneyval. The previous panel received regular briefing from Financial Services team, and if elected, this will continue. Financial Action Task Force are seeking global standards, and Moneyval will be assessing Jersey's financial services in 2023, an important piece to look at. The previous panel have indicated more legislation to come and to keep under review, which I agree with. The current cost of living crisis, I consider that the involvement of the Consumer Council is important in this aspect, and the previous panel have suggested that this is possible review subject for the incoming panel, and it is of course very relevant to all of us. Also, from the former panel's more recent reviews, I have noted two important aspects. In the regulation of Jersey estate agents, the recommendations are that the minister should move towards a regulated environment that improves the sector for both consumers and estate agents. Regarding seasonal workers and the rural economy, matters highlighted included work permits and visas with associated costs, provision of accommodation, social security payments, and the provision and cost of healthcare. These matters are also very real issues for other sectors of the economy, like hospitality and care workers. And these issues look like to need a further panel review. Related to COVID-19 and the pandemic, Jersey, along with the rest of the world, had to deal with an unprecedented health crisis, which sadly led to the loss of lives and for some lasting health effects. The community, in all its shapes and sizes, rallied around to help each other survive the worst of COVID. The effects on lives and livelihood, it's still being felt as everyone tries to build back their lives into something nearer to the previous normal, including, of course, our children. The Department for the Economy, Jersey Business, and other state departments like Social Security, Treasury, and others were able to target support to individuals and businesses large and small. This was done through a number of assistance packages, including co-funded payroll scheme, fixed cost support scheme, business disruption loan guarantee scheme, and support targeted at visitors, attractions, accommodation, and events. I believe a panel may wish to engage with those affected to evaluate the effects. Sir, previously being elected as deputy, I have studies, work experience, and qualifications in financial services, accountancy, management and project management, rural economy, including agribusiness management and administration, the food industry, including a diploma in food identity obtained in Lyon, France, experience of working in Jersey public sector, and running a small business. In my day-to-day life, I'm actively involved in overseas ed activities and actively support and promote Jersey and its diverse community, as well as sports, heritage, arts, and culture, combined with family values. I am keen to promote the value of scrutiny to our young people through schools and the youth service for active and valued engagement. I will be pleased to answer any questions members may have. And finally, if elected, the panel is open to any non-executive member of this assembly based on expertise for sharing the workload and hopefully productive time. Thank you, sir.
Are there questions for the deputy?
Thank you, sir. As a former minister, I'm quite familiar with the work of part of what the successful candidate will be scrutinising. Can I ask, sir, what the deputy thinks is the most pressing issue in that portfolio for scrutiny, sir? What she and her committee intends to deal with as the highest priority?
Yes, deputy.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Deputy, for that question. I identified three areas which are very important to look at with priority, I would say. The very pressing cost of living crisis that we have, I would think requires to look at the economic policies and procedures that were done to see how we can tackle that in the best way. Then the seasonal workers and the rural economy related to the workers' rights and how we can review the licenses and have that skills gap covered better. And we know that also the Manival is coming to assessment in 2023, and that's a very important priority to look at as well.
Supplementary? No. Thank you. Deputy Jones.
Thank you, sir. It was good to hear the deputy say that her third priority, if she is chair of the scrutiny panel, will be Manival, which obviously is the biggest piece of work for the island and for the scrutiny in the next few years. Please, could the deputy maybe explain what her how she will go about leading the panel, looking at Manival, and the process she will take? Thank you.
Deputy.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I consider a successful assessment, it's crucial to demonstrating compliance with the Financial Action Task Force and with the international standards. And the former panel regarded this work as a priority, also recommended that each piece of new legislation is accompanied by a detailed briefing from the department as well to understand properly what needs to be done. And I'll take it from the briefing, I think.
Supplementary?
No, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the Deputy? Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the state of liberalism within international relations, how important is it that actually we are making sure that we are dealing with all jurisdictions and they are maintaining their records, and if the case is, in terms of when we're scrutinising, if a regime, for instance, is obviously in a state of maybe anarchy, that obviously we are ensuring that all the relevant ministers are enforced against in terms of your role being in scrutiny. Thank you.
Deputy.
I'm aware that this panel will scrutinize across 4 areas of ministry, including Chief Minister, and also the international communication with other jurisdiction is important. In scrutinizing, it's really good to take in considerations also what other jurisdictions have done well that we could apply better in the policies that are applied by our ministers, and maybe have constructive suggestions based on that. I'm not sure if that responds. Thank you.
Honourable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And I speak as the former chairman of the panel for which the candidate is now standing. She mentioned Manival, and I simply wish to draw attention to the fact that I believe that the relationship between this particular panel and some of the ministers is perhaps more cooperative than that enjoyed by other panels in regard to both Manival in particular and external relations in particular. I very much see the panel as being a critical friend, and I don't think in respect to Manival you would need to, I think the minister himself will guide you, because he's very much alive to the needs of the island's needs to be fully up to date. So I simply wish to ask the candidate, will she adopt a very pragmatic and cooperative approach to the ministers when she deals with those aspects?
Deputy.
Thank you for the question. Yes, of course, and I've actually even had discussions yesterday with the Economic Development Minister in the idea that I'm standing for this chair, and we said that it's very important to have open communication from the start to know what's coming, and like that we can have constructive discussions on everything that is proposed ahead of even being implemented.
Are there any further questions for Deputy Kovac? In that case, that brings that period of questions to an end. And can I invite Deputy Kovac to withdraw from the chamber? Yes, Deputy Gould.
So if I may make an observation, it is intended that financial services will move to the Treasury Minister, and therefore, in light of we don't know how quickly that move will happen, I think it would be inappropriate for me to vote in this election as well as the former one. Thank you.
Yes, noted. Thank you. And perhaps Deputy Scott could return to the meeting. Yes, Deputy Scott, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, it's now your turn to address the Assembly for up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank all former members of the panel for having produced an excellent body of work. In putting myself forward for the role of chairman for this panel, my aim is to provide constructive assistance to the new administration in delivering its stated political outcomes and working with fresh talent and viewpoints to forward such work using my professional team building skills, and to help the panel strategise its scrutiny of policy. Some have described the role of scrutiny as one of holding ministers' feet to the fire. I prefer to think of working with ministers to explore known roadblocks, headwinds, pitfalls, risks and potential blind spots that may prevent them from delivering their intended strategic outcomes. Policies will be no more than wish lists without meaningful implementation plans, usually requiring prior needs and gaps analysis to help guide policy. Another way of putting it is a destination cannot be reached without a clear roadmap or in a broken vehicle. Too often, a lack of government resources has frustrated former ministers' plans. Economic productivity is a key component to providing those resources, but the challenges in delivering it are many these days. Unlike most jurisdictions, Jersey never fully recovered from the 2008 recession. Treasury's management of government investments have helped to avoid deficits, but reserves now are to secure unprecedented government borrowing. The pandemic led to unsustainable government spending, partly to keep afloat businesses that have struggled to be productive. Government policy may need to draw clearer lines between self-funding commercial ventures and government-funded social enterprises. The United Kingdom has provided overseas custom for many local businesses, but it now has the lowest growth, highest inflation and fastest deteriorating economy of all G7 economies. Inflation has risen to 8% locally. An increased number of businesses are likely to default on their debts. The world also is in a state of economic transition driven by technological development. Our finance industry risks losing a third of its jobs in just over a decade to automation and artificial intelligence. There are opportunities too. The Minister for EDTSC will need to develop economic policy that responds to market forces proactively, creatively, yet also prudently. So what qualifies me for the role of Chairman of the Economic and International Affairs Panel, and why am I putting myself forward for the role? I am an Oxford Law graduate who has practiced as an English and then a Jersey lawyer after working as a corporate tax advisor in the top City of London firm. I have built a successful career out of understanding complex matters in the global finance industry and in reviewing legislation. After moving to the island 30 years ago, I became a partner in leading local law firm Murrant and the director of its company and trust administration business. At the time, it employed close to 1,000 people worldwide. Much of my work involved advising high-profile international companies in the areas of banking, corporate and trust administration, restructuring, and mergers and acquisitions. Skilled staff shortages made me proactive in mentoring and training while running project teams, and led to me setting up my own training business with its own staff that helped to serve the local business community in other ways. Before retiring from my partnership, I helped to develop the island's structured finance and capital markets business and its regulation. I was described as top-notch in finance in the independent Legal 500 publication and sat on the local independent tax panel tasked to consider the initial OECD threat to blacklist the island's finance industry. I remain mindful of the need for that industry to be well regulated and of the importance of the money foul assessment in this respect. I also am aware of the need for the industry to avoid the burden of excessive bureaucracy and red tape. The island's external relations play an important role, not only in the finance industry, but in areas such as connectivity, supply chain, and labour supply, which support other island industries and are key to the development of future businesses on island. The pandemic and Brexit have affected our labour supply. At the same time, immigration has an impact on island resource management that needs to be addressed. Our increased cost of living and housing costs have further affected our labour supply and the operating costs of business, along with supply chain costs. As a former lawyer, I have a good understanding of the nature of evidence, which is informed by my former work as an independent member of the Public Accounts Committee and of the Islands Statistics Users Group. I expect the Minister of EDT-SC, having a background associated with data-led decision-making, to be receptive to the use of data and statistical measurement in policy-making and in the setting of targets and performance measures. This methodology has been advocated by the Island's Controller and Auditor General in relation to public spending. It will be useful not only in implementing policy, but in assessing the performance and contribution to the economy of arm's-length bodies funded by government. There is a global transition to a new economy, which the Economic Council's New Perspective reports refers. A distinction needs to be made between using and updating technology, the cost of which can be unaffordable for some private enterprises, and inventing technology, which generally involves much more investment and specialised assessment to avoid investment loss. Having discussed such matters with local tech experts, I feel reasonably equipped for the task of helping to produce an educated response to the Minister's future proposals regarding the Technology Accelerator Fund. My involvement in work to protect and develop the visitor economy of St Brela's Bay has informed me of consultants' reports produced in connection with the island's planning policy that will be relevant to reviewing the tourism strategy. The anticipated retail strategy will need to address the competition posed by online purchasing. It will be interesting to learn how the new minister intends to resolve the tensions between environmental and commercial objectives in the farming and fishing industries, bearing in mind they compete with businesses subsidised or supported by larger economies. I met with an officer of the Jersey Overseas Aid Commission over 2 years ago, who kindly explained some of its investment methodology to me. I'm aware of the ethical reasons for the Ministry's separation from external affairs work. The values promoted in the Our Island Identity Project may cause tensions with the new economy visions in the Economic Council's report, in which the Minister also was involved and which the panel can explore with her. I hope the above will satisfy you of my suitability for chairman of the panel. I would appreciate your support for my appointment to this role, in which I shall aim to be both constructive and productive.
Thank you, Deputy Scott. The first question comes from Deputy Farnham.
The Deputy, sir, gave a comprehensive speech demonstrating a good knowledge of the portfolio she hopes to scrutinise. Can she share with members what she considers to be the highest 3 priorities in that portfolio that require urgent scrutiny? So, thank you.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I have to remind the Deputy that the panel has to respond to the policy that's being produced by the Minister himself. But basically, the cost of living is one of the areas that's been explored by the panel already, and I would expect the Minister for I expect the Minister for Economic Development to be producing a fresh vision there. We have got the money foul assessment to explore too, which is a really important piece of work. And yes, I mean, I do think the tourism strategy is another area that needs to be focused on too, given the loss of a tenth of the hotel beds only in the last year, and the impact on connectivity.
Thank you, Deputy. Are there any other questions for Deputy Scott? If there are no other questions, Deputy Scott, and that completes the questions for you, Deputy. And I invite Deputy Kovash to return to the chamber. A reminder before we come to the vote that the following are unable to vote in relation to this particular appointment, namely the Chief Minister, the Minister for Economic Development, the Minister for External Relations, the Minister for International Development, and for the reasons he identified, Deputy Gorst. As both candidates have spoken and answered questions, we now move to the vote. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Kovash should press the pour button when the voting opens. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Scott should press the contra button. Members may abstain in the usual way, and members joining remotely can either vote pour or contra in the way described, or identify the name of the candidate for whom they wish to vote. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the number of votes cast for Deputy Kovash is 19, and those cast for Deputy Scott 24. And accordingly, I can announce that Deputy Scott has been appointed as the chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel.
Sir, could we have it both ways,
the
please?
States Assembly for for appointing me to this role, and I will do my best to perform it diligently and faithfully.
Thank you. Yes. Now move on to the selection of the...
Could we have
request for numbers, was there?
Yes, please.
Yes, of course.
Those voting for Deputy Kovac, the Conotabs of Trinity, St Peter, St Martin and St John, Deputy Southern, Tadier, Doublé, Lehegara, Rob Ward, Gardner, Mezek, Farnham, Coles, Porray, Catherine Curtis, Feltham, Jearn and Kovac, and in the chat, Deputy Alves. Those voting for Deputy Scott, the Conotabs of St Helier, St Lawrence, St Brallard, Grouville, St Juan, St Mary and St Saviour, Deputy Luce, Ayer, War, Balash, Miles, Reniff, Rosebinet, Howell, Ferry, Curtis, Barbara Ward, Wilson, Stevenson and Andrews, and in the chat, Deputy Scott, Conotab of St Clement and Deputy Miller.
I'll move on to the selection of the chair of the Children, Young People, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I'd like members to make nominations for the chair of that panel. Any nominations for the chair of that panel? Yes, Feltham.
I'd like to nominate Deputy Catherine Curtis. I'd like to nominate Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations for the chair of the Children, Young People, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel? No? Deputy Catherine Curtis, you wish to address the Assembly?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank members of the previous panel for their excellent work. I still don't know everyone very well, so let me give everyone an account of my skills and knowledge. I have knowledge of business, the environment, children and education and health and social services. All of these interest me. As well as bringing up my own children, I have looked after other children too. I was a foster carer for about 5 years. I'm familiar with the processes involved in the care of looked after children, and I looked after teenagers and a young child who went up for a very successful adoption. I completed the Solihull training to the highest level. I know from experience how damaging it is when the corporate parent fails in their duty. I've also taken a great interest in general education. My two eldest were home educated for a number of years while we moved abroad and then back to Jersey. I read up on theories of education and even interviewed educationalists. As for universities, I have a first-class Bachelor of Science honours degree. I also invited Nottingham Trent University and Portsmouth University to work with me on 2 different business projects, so I'm familiar in engaging with universities and involving them successfully in projects. As for Home Affairs, I will commit to scrutinise thoroughly all new laws and policies. I'm adept at examining detail while keeping in mind the bigger picture. For example, I've drafted several patent applications and redrafted them when challenged until they've been successfully granted. Doing this well is a real test of mental agility. I did most of the work myself, and once drafted, I passed them on to my patent attorneys in order to save time and money. They even offered me a job. So I hope that demonstrates I have the ability to gather information, analyse it, and respond to it. I'm well used to working in a team. This must be clear to everyone that I'm a member of a team that works very well together, Reform Jersey. I'm very hardworking, and for most of my life have worked several jobs at a time, including while running a business. So looking at education first, and starting at the youngest, The recent extension of free nursery hours for 3 to 4-year-olds from 20 to 30 per week has been a success. The Early Years Policy Development Board recommended that the government establish a long-term plan to move to a universal education offer for 2 to 3-year-olds. As well as being of benefit to young children, the option of funded nursery care for parents affords them the possibility to get paid work. And we all know there is a shortage of staff in Jersey. In 2019, 172 children were supported by the Early Years Inclusion Team. We need to continue to develop better integrated support in the early years, starting with the reformed nursery education offer. As for schools, the scrutiny panel will need to keep a close eye on the education reform programme. 13% of school pupils have special educational needs, and around 20% of pupils have a first language other than English. A worrying shortage of teaching staff is developing, and the panel will be able to support Deputy Gardner's aim, stated in her speech yesterday, to focus on teacher recruitment and retention. Looking at St Helier specifically, it would be good to get some answers about the St Helier school estate. Will the old police headquarters be used for primary school expansion? Moving on to post-16 education, I wonder if all States members are aware that grants for university education are means tested but not based on household income, which doesn't make sense. Children from single-parent families have grants based on the absent parent's income as well as household income, whether the absent parent contributes anything or not. I know of children who've been placed under extreme anxiety due to this policy. When I discussed this with the past Education Minister, Scott Wickenden, he explained that the vote to include absent parental income was taken in 2012, but only adopted for the first time this year. And that is not putting children first. Another point regarding university education funding is that it's too narrow. When canvassing during the election, I met constituents who were barely managing to fund their own Open University degrees as mature students and considering giving up. They were not getting sufficient grant support. All this while we have a shortage of teachers and other professionals. Around 1,400 Jersey people each year attend a UK university. Highlands has around 1,000 students on post-16 full-time courses. It will be of great interest to see the plans for the new Highlands campus and to ensure that it continues to do its good work, and it should be possible to offer more degree courses. Currently, there are very useful degrees in the island, like the BA Honours in Social Work. The Digital Skills Academy and an increasing number of apprenticeships should ensure opportunities in career development and lifelong learning. And now to look at the youth service. Should it be a statutory provision? This would protect its funding. As a town resident, I've seen for myself the great work done by the youth service with teenagers in Millennium Park. There are more than 60,000 contacts each year in the Jersey Youth Service. They do essential work, and I would like to know how the development of a north of St Helier Youth and Community Centre is progressing. I'd like to see the development of the youth service pilot scheme to focus on children who don't have English as their first language, specifically Portuguese, Polish and Romanian children. I took part in the recent first public meeting of the Jersey Community Partnership. A lot of work has been done following the recommendations of the Independent Jersey Pear Inquiry and the Citizens Panel, but some recommendations are yet to be implemented, and I intend to follow that up. In 2019, there were 89 looked after children. There is a shortage of foster carers, and I'm aware that the Children's Service is making great efforts to recruit more. Children's Services recruitment and retention is a real problem, though. It goes against the aims of the service in providing stability to children when their social workers change every 5 minutes. Another concern is that there were 249 episodes of children going missing reported to the police over 12 months. Of these children looked after, children accounted for 157 episodes. We need to look at why the children are going missing and whether the requirement for foster carers to report them as missing when they're out late is a procedure that's ultimately unhelpful. Scrutiny will need to examine proposals for a replacement facility for residential care for young offenders and work to prevent young people encountering law enforcement when other services would be more appropriate. CAMS have expanded their services and made some great improvements in the last few years. Sadly, the need for mental health services among the young has increased dramatically, so CAMS is in need of more support and funding. Moving on now to matters of home affairs, the Scrutiny panel can look for ways to support the work of the prison service to develop a better multidisciplinary approach to support offenders. We need a joined-up approach to those misusing drugs and alcohol. It would be good to see a progressive substance use strategy focused on the principle of harm reduction. I was very reassured yesterday to hear Deputy Miles, Home Affairs Minister, prioritise resources aimed towards the front line. Scrutiny can support this priority that frontline workers are not cut back. We need our police officers, paramedics and firefighters. In fact, if the Jersey Care model is implemented, we will need more highly trained paramedics. We must ensure that the Domestic Abuse Jersey Law 2022 is delivered in a timely manner. Around 15% of all recorded crime is domestic abuse. Great efforts have been made to prevent these crimes and to support reporting with campaigns. There is other forthcoming legislation regarding police complaints and conduct, prejudice and public disorder, and unlawful public entertainments, which Scrutiny must review. But above all, our duty will be to improve government policies, legislation, and public services. I'm still very new to the States, so please forgive me if I don't have all the answers, but I do believe I could lead the Scrutiny panel to be an effective critical friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. The first question for Deputy Catherine Curtis is from Deputy Farmer.
Thank you, sir. And the Deputy will know this because we're sitting in this assembly today surrounded by fans, and although it might not be in the direct control of the chair of the Scrutiny panel, but does she believe, sir, I'll start again, sorry. I know of at least one school that is going to be closing today because the temperatures in the classrooms are too high. Does she believe that schools, the environment in which we put our children to learn, should be an area of concern for Scrutiny, sir? And does she also agree that schools, whether they're being refurbished or built from new, should at least contain air conditioning and windows that open and close? Sir, thank you.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the question. I would have thought and would definitely like to see that any future plans would include basic requirements like windows that open. Of course, it's very important that children can learn in a relaxed and comfortable atmosphere, and even being able to go outside and sit under a tree, things like that, which is very helpful in learning and remembering things. So yes, I totally agree, and would see if we can follow that up on the Scrutiny panel. Thank you.
Deputy Jern.
Thank you, sir. I asked this question yesterday to the Minister for Education, and I would like to seek the views of the Deputy today that the Inclusive Education Review recommends the government to define inclusive education. So how would the Deputy define inclusive education?
Deputy.
Thank you for the question. Inclusive education, to me, would mean that everybody can learn, follow up their interests, and get to know more about things. So there should not be barriers in place whether that's physical barriers or structural in the way that things are organised. So I would also expect that there should be some overarching way to look into this to make sure that there are no barriers to inclusion.
Are there any further questions for Deputy Catherine Curtis? Yes, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you. Can I congratulate the Deputy on what I thought was a very excellent speech? He may be new, but I think it touched on some really important areas. One of which I would be interested to know, how does she think that Scrutiny can be proactive in helping to improve mental health services for our young people?
Deputy.
Thank you to the Deputy for her comments and the question. Mental health services is just so important, especially now since COVID, when a lot of young people have been isolated and not been able to do all the normal things that they do. I think that every report we get, we can examine thoroughly to do with mental health services. We can also organise focus groups as necessary, but this is something that we'll have to follow up. I do understand the importance of it, and I know that CAMS already does a lot of good work, but there needs to be more counsellors in schools, for example. I do know that in some of these secondary schools, there's one counsellor available, and when that person is on holiday, there's nobody to take their place. So there's good work being done, but there could be a lot more.
Are there any further questions for Deputy Conrad Bernard?
Thank you, sir. Apart from trips arranged for, or visits arranged for schools to this chamber, ably organised by the GREF, there's been little interaction between schools and parishes and government on a political level. I wonder what the candidate's views might be on that, and whether she thinks it ought to be further developed.
Deputy.
Yes, I did think there was a programme of education about the government going into schools, but I will need to look into that more. Clearly, there's a disengagement of a lot of the population with our government, of our States Assembly. So yes, that's something that I would need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If there are no further questions, that brings the time for questions to an end. And I confirm that Deputy Catherine Curtis has been appointed Chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel.
Could I just say thank you, and please do get in touch with me if you're interested in joining the panel.
Thank you. Now move on to selection of the Deputy Doublé. Selection of the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. I invite members to make nominations for the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to nominate Deputy Rob Ward as Chair of this panel, please.
Is that nomination seconded? Are there any other nominations for the Chair of this panel? Conrad Bernard.
I'd like to nominate Deputy Luce for the Chair of the panel.
Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Are there any other nominations for the Chair of this panel? No? Accordingly, I invite Deputy Luce to withdraw from the chamber.
Sir, can I ask, before I withdraw, whether we'll complete the selection before lunch?
I don't know the answer to that question.
The reason I ask, sir, is I have a medical appointment at 2 o'clock. I don't know I can be back here at 2:15. I could certainly be back here by past.
Yes. Well, perhaps we'll take that into...
So is it worth proposing
a slightly earlier adjournment for lunch now on the basis that obviously the candidate has to withdraw, so it might be awkward to work that out.
So, I was wondering, sir, of testing members' appetite. We have 2 more positions to elect, whether we continue to work until we complete it, even that means finishing at 1:30 or 2, perhaps, and work straight through until it's
I'm
done.
not sure we can guarantee that. What's the proposal? One thing we could do is hear first from Deputy Warden, the questions for him, and then break for a slightly extended lunch and adjournment. But it's a matter for members.
So I wonder if we just get this one done. I mean, if you've got to be at a hospital appointment, that's absolutely fair enough. And
yes.
it would only take an extra, I don't know how long.
The members,
so far, there haven't been, I say this and now there'll be 20 minutes of questions, obviously. But in fact, I'm happy to continue if
the members content to sit late during the short adjournment for the purpose of completing this particular chairship. Deputy Barbara Ward.
Yes, so may I suggest that maybe that we swap, we bring one of the other scrutiny panels forward, and then it would afford both candidates proper time after Deputy Luce comes back from his appointment. Thank you, sir.
That's another suggestion. Do you make that proposition?
Yes, sir.
Is that proposition seconded? Yes. Deputy Ward, something you want to say?
May I make a proposition that we just continue and finish this one first and have a late lunch? Because the late lunch will be, if we get on with this now, the late lunch will probably be 1:15. And I have a lunch appointment, but I'm happy to miss it because I think this takes priority. I don't know what Deputy Luce thinks, if he agrees. And then we get on with it, and then he can reach his appointment, etc., etc. I would like to make that proposition, please.
Yes, well, Deputy Ward, yours was Deputy Barbara Ward. Yours was made first in time. Do you wish to continue with that proposition?
I'm happy to put that to one side
Happy
and
to
go
withdraw
with
your proposition.
Deputy Ward, yeah.
Are members content to, does anyone to speak on the proposition that Deputy Ward has made, that we should simply deal with this particular chairship and then a break for lunch? Accordingly, we'll proceed on that basis. Deputy Luce, can I invite you to withdraw?
Thank you, sir, and I'm grateful to members.
Yes, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'll wait today. So I am standing for the chairperson role of this panel to continue my hard-working scrutiny in another area of keen interest for me. I bring experience, a very strong work ethic, and the ability to analyse, collaborate, and produce positive outcomes. So first I'll talk about the panel's work so far, and I thank the previous panel for providing a legacy report, which makes this bit actually both quite easy to do, but also it has to be edited down because there is so much in it. A sensible starting place for future work is indeed that legacy report from the previous panel, although the contents and the detail of the mini-budget and the 100-day plan will have to be taken into consideration. This may require some initial scrutiny. Some areas from the legacy report, just to point out, are the waste strategy, which is very important for a small island, marine resources, and there's been so much discussion on those things. Obviously, the carbon neutral roadmap, and this is a huge area of work and ongoing. The sustainable travel plans, which I know have been moved forward, but there will be more to come with that. There's the, and I mention it, and people might groan, but the vehicle testing and model that has to be adapted is going to be a really important thing that we decide upon on the island. The Creating Better Homes policy and its application. Medicinal cannabis, of course, there's a huge decision to be made there by ministers. Public health and safety rental dwelling regulations, which are being developed as well, which are very important from the Environment Minister, which come forward. The perfluoroalkyl substance, I should be able to say that, or PFAS, as you know, contamination and how it's addressed is something that has been ongoing. And also wide-rangingly, the use of Airbnb in Jersey and its impact are areas for future scrutiny. And there are more. Indeed, there is a list of forthcoming laws, which is really useful in legacy reports. And I urge anybody, actually, if you're going onto a scrutiny panel, to look back at those legacy reports, regardless of the outcome today. It will need careful planning and a work programme that extends throughout the year and includes the government plan review, of course, the good old government plan review, which we all so much look forward to, and the debate, indeed, itself. Yes, absolutely. And so I think it's very important that I have experience of planning that workload with officers. I'm a very organised person in terms of time scales. I like to prepare, and I think I've shown evidence that I prepare extremely thoroughly for every single sitting. So what the list I've read demonstrates the depth and the breadth of the panel's work, and why I have such a keen interest to chair this work. It's something to get my teeth into and build a team across the Assembly to really produce work of quality and a type of constructive scrutiny that improves policy and its application. And so I would like to talk about the process of scrutiny and why it's so vital for good governance. And that's not a word we've used yet, I think, in this Assembly, and it's such an important word. Scrutiny is a process of gathering data, information, consulting and collating evidence about policy and regulation which is brought by ministers. It's not about making policy, although good collaborative scrutiny can bring improvements, and that is certainly my experience from the last 4 years. Scrutiny must be a combination of both quantitative and qualitative research, using objective approaches to genuinely analyse the impact of regulation and policy. In doing this, we play a vital role in the accountability of government and the transparency of decision-making. Together with the government and the Assembly, good scrutiny is a vital ingredient for this good governance, something we all want and certainly our residents do. Another vital part of the chairperson role is the relationship with scrutiny officers. I know that the success of a panel is due to the hard work and professional approach of scrutiny officers. I have spoken many times in this Assembly to praise their work on reports and comments papers that have assisted this Assembly in decision-making by bringing clarity and focus on the propositions upon which we decide. I will always treat officers and panel members with respect, both in terms of the work they do and the voice they have on a collaborative panel. Inclusion is about the way we act and the behaviours we demonstrate in our working life. I will continue to lead and care for those who work with me should I be successful today. Briefly, I will explain the skills I bring to the role. I have always worked with groups of professionals, and as a head of a science department in a secondary school, working with highly qualified and specialists in their own subject requires collaborative leadership that brings out the individual skills that build a better whole outcome. And I tell you now, science teachers can be a very difficult bunch. There's a role for scrutiny of including more voices in the scrutiny research programme itself. And my laptop is just switched off, so I'm going to have to remember the number off the top of my head. One of the things I was very proud of with the Children Education Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel was the post-16 review that we undertook, which went out with 1,925, I believe the number is, surveys to young people. We managed to receive 73% of the replies from people, young people in years 11 and 12. And I think it was 51% from year 10. And that was one of the first times that that engagement had happened. And it informed our research, it informed our report, and it informed our recommendations, and insisted the then Minister in making decisions on recommendations. That to me is full, detailed and inclusive scrutiny, which is what we need to do in this Assembly. And certainly I think around the areas such as, well, most of them really, but the carbon neutral roadmap and sustainable transport, we need to have the voices of future generations in our scrutiny of work of that, because they will be vital for it. So on the personal level, I took the opportunity from the last Assembly to complete a Certificate of Parliamentary Governance with McGill University, something I would recommend to all parliamentarians. Indeed, I delivered the valedictorian speech, although I confess I had to look up what this was, as my only reference point was my children watching High School Musical, not the best reference point, I found out. I'm also very supportive of my colleagues on the scrutiny panels, and will try to ensure that their well-being is considered. And we don't talk enough about the well-being of each other in this assembly, particularly during the times of high pressure. And I hope that those who have worked with me will agree that I do take time to do that and do genuinely try to make sure people are okay. In that's a really important soft skill, perhaps, I don't know if that's the correct phrase, within a panel chair, to look after your panel members. So I'm trying to keep this speech short, but I've gone on a little bit actually. But I would like to finish with an example of how scrutiny work can transcend political differences. So in the last assembly, I was chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs panel. For some time, it was Deputy Guida who was Home Affairs Minister. I am reminded of a sitting after a rather fractious debate on a topic. I cannot actually remember what it was about. I can just remember this situation, where Deputy Guida stated that he was the arch enemy of reform. We were in full hero and villain mode at that time, and I looked up to the gallery expecting there to be minions, but there weren't. I mention this because it may have been in the same sitting, it may have been later in the week or another sitting, and in fact, on a number of occasions, the same deputy as minister praised the work of my panel and the constructive way we assisted to improve legislation. And I was very proud of that. And indeed, he did that on a number of occasions, as did other ministers. This demonstrates how scrutiny transcends political differences and allows us to move out of our echo chambers of opinion, something that is vital for us all to do. So I'll finish there, and I'll ask you to both vote for me for the position, and whether I'm successful or not, to get involved in this or other scrutiny panels, which are both a good start to any parliamentary career and just an enjoyable and positive experience. So I thank members for listening.
Thank you, Deputy Rob Ward. The first question for Deputy Ward comes from Deputy Doublé.
Thanks, sir. I'd like to ask the candidate that, given the interest in the environment from children and young people, how would the deputy ensure that their voices are heard in the work that he's going to do?
Yeah, thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for that question. It's something I mentioned in my speech. We have to engage with young people. We were starting a project, I think COVID got in the way of the now Chief Minister, and I believe Deputy Doublé were on a panel where we were looking at exactly that type of engagement. And if we cannot get young people involved in the scrutiny process over things such as climate change, we haven't got a chance, and I really believe that we can. Also, if you came to the Youth Parliament, and I do attend every Youth Parliament as best I can, I have attended Youth Parliaments actually, and those topics come up. Young people are keen to be involved, and we need to get there. But we need to get there at an early age. We must not be fearful of getting into primary schools. I actually did an assembly at Springfield School for the entire school with the little ones, and where they voted on a proposition, and the proposition was is a cat or a dog the best pet? And we had a vote and so on and so forth. But that was the first time they'd engaged in our political process. Some of the, I don't know how young they were tiny, and sitting still was a problem, but then I suppose I shouldn't complain about that. But that's the sort of thing we need to do at all levels, and we must not be fearful and think that young people do not have views, because they do. So I hope that answers the next question.
Thank you, sir. My supplementary was going to be, would the candidate take forward that piece of work that we started? So I'm pleased that he will. Will he also be a voice on the Scrutiny Liaison Committee for encouraging other panels to make sure the voice of children is heard in their work?
Yes, I think again, the Deputy, that's exactly where that panel started, and I think the role of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee for that coordination has been very good in the last 4 years, and it's given us good communication between committees. And there are common factors between committees, one of them being that engagement with young people, one of them being engaging areas of our community that we have not engaged before in the scrutiny process. Because what that does, it gives more value to the scrutiny process. If that's a better process, it gives more value to the legislation that's passed, and it gives more value, and we're back to that word again, governance of what we produce in this assembly.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Mezek.
Sir, Deputy Doublé asked almost word for word the exact question that I was going to.
Thank you. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you. Will the Deputy commit to ensure that environmental policies that come before him for scrutiny are considered from a point of view of being realistic, deliverable, and take into account the experience of families? And how will he ensure that happens?
Yeah, I thank the Deputy for the question. That's a really good point, actually. Absolutely. And I think that's what scrutiny is about. I would want a panel of members, and if I'm successful, from across this assembly. And I don't say that point about not being an echo chamber lightly. I think actually I've improved as a politician by avoiding that. I think, if I'm honest, and I mention it, I think as a party we've improved because of that. And I think it's really important for us to do that. And part of that is hearing those voices. So what is a reality of that for families? And also getting the voice of families in there. That's partly the children. Also there is, I mean, I'm a parent, I've got 2 children, they're all grown up and so on. I do sometimes think that my daughter is adding to the greenhouse effect on her own, but we won't go into that. And it is important that we engage across those groups of people. But yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Airbnb accommodation is proving to be very popular and a way of families to earn a few pounds during the summer season, but it falls without the law. What are the candidates' views on making that legal?
Well, thank you. I thank the Constable for the question. First of all, any law would come from the Minister. But second, I think any review into Airbnb needs to do basically the key things that come from scrutiny. What's actually happening, what's the data, what's the quantitative data. There is qualitative data around that in terms of what these places look like, what access they've got and so on and so forth. And then what laws actually exist and what is it that Jersey as an island wants. And I think that's something we need to think up very carefully when we look at legislation. And I think that's something we've done previously with, particularly I believe with Home Affairs. Does the legislation fit Jersey as our jurisdiction? We are not the UK, we're not France, we have links with, we're not the USA, we're not other parts of the world. It has to be very distinct to Jersey. Will it work here? How will it work? Is it working? Are the questions. And then all we can do, as I'm sure the Constable knows, is an experienced scrutineer, we can make recommendations because that's the role of the panel. I hope that answers your question.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Clearly, a lot of the work of scrutiny is reactive, but I wonder if the candidate would care to comment on what he sees as particular priorities he might want to pursue if he were chair of the committee.
Yes, thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his question. From the list from the legacy report, I think one of the key, well, the first thing is whatever comes from the mini budget and the 100-day plan has to be scrutinised, and it will be a quick turnaround. There is an irony there when we spent so much time talking about having time to scrutinise, and I hope that the Scrutiny Liaison Committee, for example, can coordinate how that scrutiny will happen. That has to happen so that scrutiny is involved in anything like that. I have no problem with that idea, and I think it's a good idea to do those sorts of things, but that certainly would be a priority first of all. I think we are along the, real pun here, along the road of sustainable transport. And there were some decisions made in the last Assembly, one of them being, for example, the transfer of £1.4 million into active travel that was agreed and I hope doesn't change. So I think one of the simple and quick things to do would be to check how that is being utilised fully in the way it was intended to. I think as well, there is a need, and perhaps it's not particularly fashionable, but to look at the waste strategy on the island as we look ahead, because I think it interlinks with the parishes and recycling schemes. It certainly interlinks with what we're producing in terms of waste and how we can change our economy. It goes across other panels actually, our economy to not be producing so much waste in what we import and what we buy. So I think those at first sight would be the case, but that would be up to the panel. There has to be an agreement across panel. You have to be working together. And certainly in the panels before, other people brought priorities. And indeed, I have no issue with people leading reviews. Deputy Doublé led the review into COVID recovery. And I think I actually think it's a really good idea for panels to do that. And new members, if you're on a panel, don't be afraid to lead a review. It might look daunting, but honestly, it's a really good thing to do. So I hope that answers your question.
Are there any further questions for Deputy Board? Deputy Stevenson, yes.
Thank you. I was encouraged by the mention of PFAS in your speech, in the Deputy's speech at the beginning, as representing a constituency that has some key areas of pollution in this. It's of interest. What at this stage does the Deputy think such a review should focus on, and would it include the extension of mains water and questions around that?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say to the Deputy, one of the things I know about PFAS, because I've had people contact me as well, because people move from that area in the islands of our constituents, is the first process was to offer a testing process, a blood test. I believe they were sent off to America, and we look at the effect of that. My concern was always that you will test people and say, oh yeah, by the way, you've got high levels of PFAS in your blood. Then what does government do? And that is the next stage, I think, that must be looking at a review. What have you actually done to test for this? Now, what is the next stage? Because government needs to have a plan for that. In terms of mains water, I think that's a huge issue in many, many places. And that I think that might be also part of the waste strategy in terms of how you're going to link people up to both of those things. So yes, it's certainly part of that. I think the PFAS thing has been and gone in terms of the water supply and is there, and that's the issue we need to deal with now. It may well be that one of the products of that is to increase the amount of mains water. But again, I think I'm getting into the territory there of what ministers will decide upon. But certainly, it's a really good opportunity to produce objective, quantitative evidence to say this is where we are when the blood test comes back. Here you are, Minister, we've produced this, and what are you going to do? Which is always a good question from Scrutiny.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are no further questions for Deputy Ward, then that brings the time for questions to an end. And I invite Deputy Ward to withdraw from the chamber.
So I need to take my pass. Am I taking my phone off?
You're okay taking it off. I think you're going to be supervised wherever you go. That's my understanding anyway. And invite Deputy Luce to return. Yes, Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. Members, living in, working in, enjoying and protecting, enhancing our environment here in Jersey has never been more important. Keeping those brown cows in green fields is as important now as it ever was. Improving our environment, whether on land or sea, is vital. Trying to list everything I would wish to scrutinise in the next 4 years is impossible, but clearly the New Ireland Plan is a massively important document. Whether we amend it or have another new one, we need to make it simpler, shorter, easier to use, and more importantly, understand. I want to use Scrutiny to help find and deliver more housing sites, but also increase the protection of the green zone. Not an easy compromise, but one I want to help achieve. Our Energy Plan 2050 has set us some targets for carbon emissions, and with new houses now using much less energy, in the near future we must concentrate on transport and the historic housing stock. I want the Minister to be prioritising electric vehicles. Government must do so much more to facilitate greater uptake here in Jersey. It's clear to me that the electricity law is seriously outdated. We need a new energy law. Jersey is yet to properly embrace sustainable energy production, and this must change. We must have more solar power generation. I will do whatever I can to encourage this. We need a proper commercial experiment looking at ground source heat. I will press the Minister to do this. And offshore wind power needs to be seriously looked at, and I will do all I can to encourage the Minister in this direction. Climate change mitigation work will continue and must be coordinated by the Environment Department. It's vital that we plan for the future. The Minister will need to commit to bold, long-term plans in order to safeguard the island for future generations. Our access strategy to the countryside needs to start delivering tangible improvements. More resources needed. Just maintaining our footpath network is not good enough. Part of the rural economy strategy is to use buffer strips. These could double as footpaths, so we have the ability to reduce inorganic input, add to footpaths and increase biodiversity, much needed by pollinators all in one move, and I would hope to persuade the new Minister in this direction. The competitive world of weather forecasting becomes ever more challenging day by day. Our current service is the most visited state's internet site in Jersey and is much valued by not just local residents, but by the maritime and aviation community. The Minister must resolve any funding issues, and he must also look to find ways not just to continue, but to enhance the service. We will and we must continue to identify, trial and encourage new crops. We've had great success with hemp and tea in the last 3 years, but I will press the Minister to get farmers to continue to diversify and to continue to reduce their inputs. Through the Action for Cleaner Water group, we've achieved much. Nitrate levels in our groundwater and streams are better than they've been for decades, but we can't be complacent and we need to keep moving. Neither agriculture nor fisheries have been immune to the challenges of Brexit and COVID. One of those challenges is agricultural workers. This issue has to be addressed, and work permits have worked previously very well, could be used again, and I want the Minister to understand that. But we also need flexibility to help meet industry demand. Disease spread is a consequence of climate change and an ever-increasing threat. That's why ever stronger border controls will be essential, and we must remain ever vigilant. Climate change is also hastening the arrival of certain non-native invasive species, most recently the Asian hornet, but more invasives will follow, and the Minister must be ready to act. While not yet a significant issue, the Minister must continue to do everything he can to deter fly tipping. It's socially and environmentally unacceptable, and those caught should expect to find themselves prosecuted, and I will press the Minister to continue to prioritise this. Drone technology has progressed immensely in recent years, and we now have access to drones in the department, the Environment Department, and combined with the Internet of Things, the Minister should be using drone technology to make Jersey a better place. We must also continue to reduce air pollution. All sections of government must work together on this issue. I will press the Minister on air pollution issues around schools and in our capital. So I believe that all master planning should be in the planning department, whether that's things like the Waterfront Master Plan, St Helier Master Plan, the Island Master Plan. All these must be coordinated. And the same goes for public transport, traffic and parking. These issues all link to air quality, congestion, speed of travel, and we must have all these subjects under the control of a single entity, and I will, if elected, press ministers to undertake these changes. The Minister should continue to develop a policy for our public realm. I want to do all I can to help with the improving of our capital and the quality of the public amenities inside it, be that green spaces, play spaces, open spaces. We must do better, and I want to do all I can to help the Minister carry on working with the Constable of St Helier to improve further. Finally, I commit to being a critical friend when it comes to our green zone policies. Everything on this island centres around the beauty of our environment, countryside and our coastline. And while some compromises will always have to be made, we reduce the protection for those areas at our peril. Everything I will do and all the policies I will scrutinise regarding fishing should be working towards a sustainable fishery for future generations. Whelks, brown crab and even lobster coming under threat of exploitation. I want the Minister to continue to prioritise long-term sustainability and viability over short-term profit. In all decision-making, accurate current data is key. I want the Minister to make sure the data collection is now an absolute priority for Marine Resources Department especially. And in the same vein, I will encourage the Minister to investigate the possibility of working with major universities to provide marine facilities for degree courses in maritime-related matters. As on land, we must be on our guard for non-native invasive species in our waters. While we may not be in a position to stop invasives, we must have best plans ready to mitigate their effects. Fishing is probably the most important and complicated part of any portfolio I've held since 2011, balancing the demands of Brexit trade agreement, fisheries management agreements with the UK, Guernsey, and the impending nature and extent clause of the Brexit TECA that will begin very soon make this area a very serious issue indeed. I would commit to doing whatever I can to create the very best outcome for our local fishing fleet. Our fishermen have historic rights in and around the Channel Islands waters. These must be maintained in perpetuity. I want to continue to say to the Minister and islanders, don't waste resources. 7 years ago, we signed up to a plastic-free coastline campaign, but it's not just plastic. It's food waste, water waste, it's making sure that we do not waste any of our resources. Let's make best use of all our structures and buildings. Let's not build new unnecessarily. Let's strive to be a waste-free island. Finally, sir, housing. We know that we need more housing, and that's across every different sector. Social housing, affordable housing, sheltered housing, key worker accommodation. We need more of every type. But first, we need data, and that work has been committed to by our new Minister. Once we know exactly what we need, then we need a delivery policy, and we need it yesterday. This will be an absolute priority for me to press the Minister to move as quickly as he possibly can on these issues. So, sir, there are plenty of priorities that I want to scrutinise. It's a big ask, but they are all vital. New Island Plan, climate change, sustainable energy, carbon emissions, electric vehicles, traffic, public realm, waste, housing. The list goes on. I would ask the Assembly to support me to scrutinise all this vital work as a critical friend. This is an immense subject, and we all need to work together for the best outcomes for our wonderful environment here in Jersey. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. The first question of Deputy Lees is from Deputy Taddier. Your question.
Sir, I'm just being dazzled by the Constable of St John's lapel badge, and that's why I'm slightly blinded this time of day. The risks of being in the chamber. So the Deputy gave what I thought was a very good manifesto for the environment, but it seemed to me it would have been better suited to somebody standing for that post of Minister. Does he recognise that the job of scrutiny, as I understand it, is to primarily scrutinise government policy, not to try and put forward one's own policy as to what the Minister, he thinks the Minister should be doing, and pressing him to implement that? Or have I misunderstood?
No, the Deputy hasn't misunderstood, sir, and he may wish to know that the speech was put together with extremely short notice in the last hour, and it's an adaptation of a speech I used some years ago. I absolutely agree that it's important that scrutiny has to scrutinise the policies brought forward by the Minister, but I thought in the address I've just given in 10 minutes it would show that where my credentials would lie and the direction I would take if I had the opportunity to press a Minister in any particular direction. The Minister may choose or otherwise to go in any direction he chooses, and whatever policy he comes out with will be those policies that scrutiny will intend to look at.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Renouf.
So the work of scrutiny is, of course, largely reactive. There were a lot of priorities in your speech, and I wonder if you would hazard an attempt to suggest which your priorities might have been, bearing in mind the spread across not just the environment brief, but across other areas of that scrutiny panel.
Deputy.
Well, my own personal priorities, sir, I think would have to go back to fundamental basics and look at the weather that we have outside today and accept the fact that our climate is changing, the way that we adapt to climate change or the way we try to slow down climate changes to reduce carbon emissions. And I think that is something that we need to look at. We're very fortunate we have an island that uses low carbon energy, but we need to do more on using liquid fuel. So that means engines, internal combustion engines, and that also means the heating of our historic housing stock. I think those are two priorities. But I also feel that we need to be looking at more security for our energy, which is why I would always urge the Minister to look at offshore wind and also the creation of more solar power on island.
Deputy. Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. And following on from that answer, in relation to harnessing the power of renewable energy, the three main constituents being solar, wind and tidal, what does the candidate believe is the most desirable solution for the island on a long-term basis, which will create the least environmental impact, sir?
Deputy.
That's a very challenging question, sir, because each particular method of creating power mentioned by the Deputy comes with its own environmental impact. So wind power at sea will have an impact on the seabed, it will have an impact on the marine environment, it will have an impact on the ability of our fishermen to fish in those areas. It will also need to be changed after a number of years because the infrastructure will wear out. Solar on land will have an impact on the perception of the public in the countryside because one may well see these solar farms. Tidal is a particularly interesting one. If we look to the south of the island to the Ross Barrage, we'll note there that the technology hasn't changed for many, many decades. In fact, it's still working perfectly well. If the island could find a way to harness the same sort of power as the Ross Barrage, it would be wonderful. But it would also have a major impact on the way the island looks and the way the islanders look out to sea. So each technology has its own drawbacks, but I think for me at the moment, the cost of producing wind power is reducing all the time, and I think we probably need to, if I had my way, follow the French. If we need to create a large amount of sustainable energy, follow the French and look to what they've done in their wind farm they're building currently north of the Brittany coast.
Thank you, sir. Quick supplementary. So, does he agree with me that on island solar generation and wind generation are the most likely solutions for the long-term sustainability of our island's energy needs, sir?
Deputy.
I'm not sure of the long-term sustainability, but certainly the Deputy's right in as much as we should be doing a lot more to encourage people to produce solar energy and wind energy on island. It can be done. It can be done in ways and not have too much of a perception on the public that the whole island's covered in turbines or solar panels, but we should be and must do more.
Thank you. Conor Thompson-Bernard.
Thank you, sir. Would the candidate agree with the creation of a Minister for Energy, and given the size of that portfolio, a separate scrutiny panel to follow him? Thank you, sir.
Deputy.
It's certainly a ministry that's been mooted in the recent months, sir, and it certainly must be worth looking at. I don't know quite how wide a portfolio that minister would be given. For example, would their remit go into liquid fuel and things like that? Would it impose on fuel taxation? So it's a subject that certainly needs addressing and certainly could be considered, but I'm not sure at this moment it's a definite yes or no.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Given the interest in environmental issues by children and young people, how would the candidate plan to take their views and their voice into account?
Deputy.
It's certainly clear to me, and I'm sure it's clear to the Deputy and other members of the Assembly, that the younger generation think very much more carefully about climate change, about recycling, about wasting, about some of the issues that maybe older people like myself don't consider such a priority. I think that the younger generation will find ways of letting us know, whether it's our children or our grandchildren in my case, or whether it's through the youth parliament, whether it's through any of these youth organisations. But I think the message will come clear to members from young people that they want us to do more when it comes to the environment.
Supplementary, please, sir. What would the candidate do himself to reach out to young children and amplify their voices?
Certainly when it comes to writing scrutiny reviews, sir, it's the scrutiny panel have it at their disposal to undertake research work and ask people to come in for public hearings or submit evidence. And certainly if the issue arose where we felt we needed to consult with younger people, I see no reason why we couldn't go into schools or write to schools, ask for evidence to be submitted from school children of all ages and graduates at university, young people in Jersey, put out the word and ask for submissions, and I'm sure they'd be very forthcoming.
Thank you. Deputy Tadier.
So I think the Constable of St Mary wanted to ask a question.
Well, he did, but there's plenty of time, so I'll
okay,
call you
that's fine.
first.
So the question was to ask, it seems to be an area of concern for some in the Assembly that the Deputy, being a member of a political party, could he ensure that his membership of the political party wouldn't influence his scrutiny work in any adverse way?
I can assure the Deputy he will know only too well that I am not a member of a particularly large and well-represented party in this Assembly. And if the whip decided that I was saying something out of turn, I'm sure I could have a word with myself.
And as I said, so it's not a problem that I have. I think party politics is entirely normal. That's why we have it. That's why it exists in most places in the world. But perhaps on a more, to push the former minister and the candidate further, does he think that there's a concern that he might see himself more as a shadow environment minister than more of a chair of the panel, given the very good manifesto that he's outlined today in the Assembly?
I'd like to feel that I could be seen as a good scrutineer, sir. The Deputy's quite right. I was Minister for the Environment for 3.5 years, but I've also chaired the Economic Panel. I've been Vice Chair of the Economic Panel. I've been Vice Chair of the Environment Panel, and most recently served on the Environment Scrutiny Panel in the last session. So I'd like to think I can do both jobs, and I'd certainly like to think I can be constructive when it comes to scrutiny.
Thank you, Deputy. Constable of St Mary.
Thank you, sir. I thank Deputy Tadier for his courtesy in putting me up the building, as it were. In his question, the new Minister of the Environment stated that the work of scrutiny is mainly reactive. Would the candidate actually agree with that? And would you not accept that a large part of the panel's duty is to be proactive where the panel believes that some existing situation needs to be rectified, even if it's not the subject of an immediate proposition?
I'm grateful to the Constable, sir, because I too reacted to the word when the Minister used it. It's always been my view that scrutiny looks at policy and development and moving forward, and as such is not necessarily reactive. That's a job very much more for PAC to look backwards at value for money and things that have been done. So yes, I agree with the Constable, sir. While we are obviously, scrutiny is obviously reactive to the Minister and the policies he puts forward, it's very much about helping or criticising in a friendly way the policies, the directions that the Minister wishes to go in.
Thank you, Deputy. Are there any further questions for Deputy Luce? Not. Yes, Deputy Kovac.
Thank you. Just want to ask, what's the candidate view on the marine park in Jersey waters?
Deputy.
Certainly, I've thought a lot about the marine park, sir. It's in my manifesto that I was supporting. It's the marine park coming forward in the next 4 years I didn't support it in the last session because I thought it all came on a little bit too fast, because the most important thing is here we need to find ways to work with the fishing community and not against them when it comes to the creation of this park. I'm certainly convinced that if you reduce the amount of effort, you will increase the amount of environment there. And if we can find ways to get to a point where there's a lot more stock in the sea and the fishermen need to take a lot less of it, that would be a much, much better way to be. The difficulty we have is getting to that position. Asking a fisherman to use a half or a third of the number of fishing pots he uses currently only works when there's an increase in the stock. So that short period or long, medium short period of time between now and 5 or 6 years' time, when the marine park really starts to come into effect, is a time period where the industry will need a lot of support to ensure that we still have some fishermen left in Jersey when the benefits of the marine park are there to be enjoyed.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy mentioned that he felt that the next island plan needs to be simpler. Could he please explain whether he's thinking in terms of there being less discretion for planning officers or more?
Deputy.
I've thought that the island plan should be a shorter document for some time, sir, and it was encouraging on one hand to see that the recent draft bridging island plan actually was a less number of pages. However, as members will have found out, there were so many appendices and additional documents that we had to go to that the entirety of the work was considerably larger than we had in previous iterations. I still believe we need a shorter, clearer, more concise and easier to understand plan. I am not sure quite where the Deputy's coming from, but sir, I hate subjectivity. I hate the ability of people to make decisions just how they feel. I want rules in black and white. I want policies in black and white that are easy to understand, that everybody knows exactly where they are. I don't like uncertainty and changes. So I would say to the Deputy, I want a shorter document, one that's easier, and I want one that civil servants can use and make decisions on much more quickly.
Thank you, Deputy.
Supplementals, please, sir.
Yes.
So does that, is the Deputy therefore thinking of if it's going to be in black and white, would not the document need to be more detailed in order for people to have clarity?
Deputy.
It's an interesting point, sir, and one that would probably need to be discussed with officers, but at the end of the day, it's for the Minister to bring it forward and me to scrutinise it if the Minister feels that that's the direction he wants to go in. Maybe I'll be fortunate enough to have a look and see if we can make it together a better document.
Thank you, Deputy. If there are no further questions for Deputy Luce, then that brings the time for questions to an end. I invite Deputy Rob Ward to return to the chamber. Both candidates have spoken and answered questions. We now move to the vote. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Rob Ward should press the pour button. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Luce should press the contre button. Members may abstain in the usual way. As to members present remotely, they may either indicate their vote by typing pour, contre, or indicating the name of the candidate for whom they wish to vote. I now ask the greffier to open the voting. All members have the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Another close vote, which we're just checking. Right. How did you vote? Yes. I think Deputy War, you inadvertently cast a vote. Yes. So we need to disallow your vote. And I can announce that Deputy Ward received 21 votes. Deputy Luce received 24 votes. Accordingly, Deputy Luce has been appointed as Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
Sir, may I, if we have...
What do you want to read out first? Names first, then we'll come to your...
Those voting for Deputy Ward, the Conotab of St Helier, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Doublé, Lahegara, Ayer and Rob Ward, Deputies Moore, Mezek, Farnham, Coles, Porre, Curtis, Faltham, Jearn, Kovac, Curtis, Barbara Ward, Wilson, Stevenson, and in the chat, Deputy Alves. And those voting in the chamber, the Conotabs of, for Deputy Luce, the Conotabs of St Lawrence, St Brallard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Grouville, St Juan, St Mary and St Saviour, Deputy Labby, Luce, Morel, Balash, Gorst, Osif, Miles, Rose Binet, Howell, Ferry and Andrews, and in the chat, Deputy Scott Miller and the Conotab of St Clement.
Deputy Farnham?
Thank you, sir. If we are having, if we have just one candidate for each of the following two nominations, it strikes me that we could work through and get this finished, and I just wondered if we could have any indications of... No.
I'm not sure we can.
Okay, sir, I'll withdraw that.
I don't think that would be
I get the message,
fair.
sir, from the floor.
May I propose the adjournment, please?
Yes. Adjournment seconded. Anyone to speak
Yes,
on the
sir.
adjournment?
So what time are we coming back, though? Because it's already 1:25, and we've got lunchtime appointments and things to do, some of us.
Well, it's 2:15 unless someone proposes another time.
So can I propose we come back at 3?
Proposition of 2:30, please.
Yes. Members content to return at 2:30. Those in favour, please show. Assembly is adjourned until 2:30.